Good evening. This is the Wednesday, May 28th, 2025 meeting of the Finance Committee. We're in the Public Safety Complex at 576 Main Street. We're also available via Zoom with an online link on the town's website. We welcome our colleagues from the Select Board. Peter, I don't know if you want to open your meeting, or?
I do, thank you. I call to order the the Select Board meeting for May 28th, 2025, also 7 o'clock, and also from the Public Safety Complex in the fine company of the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee is a membership of 7. Quorum is 4. We have 5 present. I declare we have a quorum, and we're open for business. Nice seeing you all again. It's been 22 hours since we've last been together. So there's been a number of things shared with us last evening. And Heather was kind enough to forward that to us late last evening, and I forwarded it to everyone. I'm forgetting whether it was last evening or early morning today. I think there are 2 principal documents that I think we can work with. One is the one that was presented last evening, essentially by the Select Board, which is multiple pages, 6, I think, in total. And then there is a one-page document that the Finance Committee, myself, I'll be guilty in particular, that presented it. I think we may occasionally make reference to both, because I think the good news is there was some commonalities in both of them. But I think what I'd like to do is suggest that we start with the more detailed one that was presented on the Select Board side, in large part because it's more detailed. And it's more accustomed to the kind of budget work page and worksheets and workbooks that we've worked with. And if you'll allow me to suggest a process, because there's a lot to unpack in these 6 pages. I would like to suggest a slight repeat of what we did 3 meetings ago. I'd like us to go through page by page quickly, not necessarily line by line, but page by page. And if you see here, the moderator is first. I'd like us to go through, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but to dispense with some of the budgets, some of the cost centers that we don't need to deal with this evening. And I think we can take that 43 and shrink it down to 15. And in doing that, I would like the Finance Committee and frankly the Select Board to be allowed to say, for example, if I suggest that we make a motion to move on the moderator, I don't suspect I'm going to have much resistance because it has a 0 budget. But if anybody would like to hold the department, we would hold it and keep going until we can get through all of them to shrink down to those that are going to be held. And if one person wants it held, that should be good enough for the rest of us to respect what that reason might be, to be later on discussed and revisited. So does that make any sense to anybody? Okay? So I think I'm not trying to run the meeting, but I'm trying to control it and keep it organized, because I think when you see that we've narrowed it down to 15 or 17, we got a lot of work to do in those 15 or 17 departments. So I'm going to lead with my chin and suggest that the moderator, account number 1114, be approved at 0, and we move forward. Is that something we want to put to a vote, so that we can officially say that we voted on it? So I would make that recommendation, that we make a recommendation to vote on those that we're going to take a pass on and move over. Does that make sense?
It's fine. Yeah.
So is there a motion to approve the moderator?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none? Abstentions, none. I would like to hold the select board. I would like to hold the town administrator. The next one is 1129, permitting and economic development coordinator. That remained at the 18.25 reduction. Is there a motion to move on that, or is there a wish to hold it?
I'm sorry, Mark, I was distracted. What line?
The permitting and economic development coordinator.
We're missing the three columns on the far right. It's hard to see
Yeah,
what-
maybe if we can freeze the panes. Thanks.
Which one, what do you want?
The
Well,
revised.
again, I think it's important that we know what the effective percentage of cut is overall after this has been modified.
I apologize, I was assuming everybody was working from a print copy. My apologies. So it was reduced by the 18.25%.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Abstentions? None. Finance Committee,
So moved.
motion to move it, second?
18%.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Abstentions? None? Reserve Fund. It's been budgeted at 50 for a number of different iterations. So essentially, it was not subject to the 18.25%. It would remain the same, and lots of reasons why it did. But don't want to influence moving it.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion? None in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It passes. I'd like to hold the town accountant. I'd like to hold the assessors. Treasurer collector. That was reduced by the 18.25, which was one of the instructions given to them.
I'd like to hold that.
Okay, there's a hold. I'd like to hold legal services. I'd like to hold MIS, IT.
Yep.
I'd like to hold town clerk. I'd like to hold election registrars. Is there a motion to move the Conservation Commission?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion?
Well, I'm here to represent the Conservation Commission, so I'd like to know what it is we're discussing.
So we'll hold it for discussion, okay? Regional planning,
So moved.
That's exempt. Yep.
there's a second?
Second.
Any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, abstentions? None, it passes. I'd like to hold economic development. Local Historical District Commission,
So moved.
second?
Second.
Any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It passes. Charter Review Committee, I'd like to hold. Public Building Maintenance.
So
was
moved.
reduced by 18.25% as requested.
So moved.
So moved, there's a second? Second, any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, abstentions? None, so moved. Town insurance,
So moved.
no change.
Second.
This is second, any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. So moved. In a perfunctory way, can we do town reports?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Moved. Town clock?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Passes. Police Department, I'd like to hold. Regional Dispatch.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It passes. I'd like to hold Fire Department. Building Department. Reduced 18.25%.
So moved.
So move second.
Second.
Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It moves. Animal Control Officer.
So
No
moved.
change.
So moved.
So moved. Second. Second. Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It moves. Tree Warden, I'd like to hold. Wachusett Regional School District Assessment.
Hold? No, I'm just seeing if you.
Is there a motion to move?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Pregnant pause on the discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Abstentions?
Question.
Bay Path Vocational School Assessment.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
I think you have to recuse yourself.
I'm sorry. Yes, I should. Yes,
Yep,
sir.
sorry.
Good job on that.
Yep.
Good job.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
No. None.
Abstain.
Abstentions?
Abstain.
One. Department of Public Works, I'd like to hold. Snow and ice.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. So moved. Streetlights? No change.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It moves. Waste collection? No change. Keeping in mind that there's a corresponding revenue number to this as well.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It moves. Cemetery Commission, I'd like to hold. Board of Health, 18.25% reduction.
So moved.
Motion, second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Passes. Council on Aging, I will abstain, but will handle the matter of the voting.
Move to,
Motion?
yeah, move.
Second?
Actually, you know what? Let's parking lot this one.
You want to hold it?
Yeah, hold it, yeah.
Okay. Veterans Agent,
So moved.
is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, abstentions? None, it moves. Like to hold the library.
Yeah.
Recreation, perfunctory because it's on our list, but no budget impact. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Historical Commission.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It passes. Would anybody mind if I collectively do accounts debt and principal, debt, interest, account number 1710, 1711, 1750, 1751, 1752, and I got a stapler on the way of the other one.
1709,
Is there a motion to move all of those?
all exempt.
And the second, any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, abstentions? None. Employee benefits I'd like to hold. Retirement assessment. Zero change.
So moved.
Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, abstentions? None. It's moved. Central purchasing.
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It passes. So by my count, that reduced 43 down to 20. Cut it in more than half. Everybody comfortable with that? So now we'll focus on the 20, which are wide open for discussion, and the question then becomes, do we want to do one based on somebody's preference to choose it, or do you want to do them in order?
The only question I would have, Mark, is does it make sense to work towards a number that we're looking for?
Well, I think it may make
More
some
questions.
sense if you look at the particular schedule here. I think I hope anyways, Heather, it's been unchanged. This one, as presented last night, reflects still a deficit of 27,382, but I believe that it's got to be added to because DPW's summer hours was taken out twice. So I think we're looking at the 23 that we moved and the 20 we have left, we're looking at a $34,000 deficit.
There was a few others. Registrars, we were up in the air about?
Yeah, registrars was another one because they would need to still get paid until the reappointment period. But I did also want to mention that you do have an influx as well of revenue that we hadn't accounted for here. So the ambulance receipts was going to come in at 90,000 rather than 67. So that's going to change your bottom line.
Oh, that's good.
So somebody got a calculator here. Let's do the 27 plus the 7 is 34 minus
23.
23.
That's 11.
We're at 11. Can we just hold the registrars until we actually get to that one? Because I think there's a question. In fact, if you don't mind, do you want to go to the registrars right now? Does that make any sense? So that happens to be account 1162. I asked for it to be held to raise the question that Julia and Jeremy just raised, and that is, we're showing a reduction in the stipends, but I think we were advised that it has to coordinate with their term. But I also heard somebody say last night, can we ask of them to volunteer the release of their particular stipend? So with all the other ones that have been eliminated, and some, I think a year ago, the select board volunteered to eliminate theirs. I would ask that the town clerk ask the registrars, stipend recipients what their wish is. And will abide by that wish, but it is possible that they could acquiesce to the goodwill of what we're all trying to do, and they may relinquish that particular stipend. Does that make sense?
Yeah, out of the three, none of them are up this year. So one's a 26, one's a 27, one's a 28. Lori's a 25, and I don't think she's part of that stipend, based on the annual times 3 would be the 1650.
Yeah, Laurie's not in consideration here, so is it, we've got two choices, one to leave it in or add it back, and the other is to make the inquiry. I'm of the position we should make the inquiry.
Yes, but maybe assume for our accounting tonight that it's still in there, right?
Yep, that we can do that. So that's a good point. We're going to make the ask. I don't know who's going to make the ask. Is that going to be the town clerk? So through the town administrator, could you ask the town clerk? And we'll take it out of play, assume that it remains in there rather, which means that we need to add it back. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So whoever's doing the math, we need to add back 1650. Okay.
It totals down below, so it just changes it. Now it's 6,032 out of whack, I believe. That's how you wrote it, so it shows negative, correct? Okay.
But is someone keeping a running total of where we are?
Yes.
Okay. So now with the other remaining, what is your wish? Do you want to do it as you are struck to want to talk about it, or do you want to do it in any particular order, or what's the wish of the committee?
I have no preference.
I don't either. Taking them down the road would be fine with me.
Okay. So let's kind of do them in semi-order, okay? So I'm going to speak to the point of, on the first page is the select board and there's the town administrator. And I think actually whatever is ultimately decided on the town administrator can play into the select board. So I'm going to do the town administrator first. What you see in front of you is something new to all of us as of last night. And that is to markedly reduce the position from a full-time position to a part-time position, from 24/7 down to 20 hours, and to reduce the search firm fee, which I had thought was going to be in the $10,000 to $20,000 range, down to $5,000. Personally, I'm not in favor of reducing, I don't know how much say I have, but I'm going to go on record as saying I'm opposed to reducing that position down to half-time. And by extension, I think that would result in the search committee fee being too low. I think this is clearly a full-time position, particularly in the times that we're here in, the dire times. It's an easy target to save money, but I think it's one of the principal positions that could help lead us from that. Keeping in mind that the Charter Review Committee is undergoing a charter review. Don't know where they would land on this, whether or not they have any purview in landing one way or another. And some of you have actually talked about maybe in the future having a town manager and not a town administrator, and now we're cutting the position down in half. So I'm not in favor of it.
Yeah. I mean, I can personally see that, Mark. I don't like the idea of cutting this position because I do think it's critical. I don't think we have much choice if we want to look at things like doing less reducements to police and fire to make up the difference. I think this is a terrible option, but it may be a necessary option. So I would support reducing it. I don't like it. I don't think it's the best management decision for the town. But I don't think we have much choice if we want to look at things like the 24-hour police and fire and not running into that. I mean, I think this is one we can keep and play, but I would favor reducing it. What I wouldn't favor is reducing that and reducing the assistant to the select board, because somebody needs to keep the lights on at town hall. So I think it's kind of a tit for tat there. Again, I don't think it's a great option, but I would support reducing it. If we can find the money and not do it, I think that's great too. I think we just may be in a situation where we just can't afford it. It's terrible.
So if you found the money, would you be in favor of reducing it?
Yes. If we say that again?
If we found the money
Yeah.
later on in the others that we
Yeah,
talked
yeah.
about, if the money is found, so the question is, are you in favor of reducing it only because of budget constraints?
Yes,
Or,
correct.
so if we found the money later on, you would come back and change your vote on that?
Correct, absolutely. It's not like, I don't feel great about reducing it to halftime, but that's exactly right. If we find the money, then we can restore it.
I think from a long-term perspective, when we're talking about bringing the town administrator down to halftime, as I was putting this together and putting my thoughts into it, my thought process was, this is a one-year correction, so
Yes.
a one-year fix. But I would hope that with discussions that should ensue after we get this budget taken care of, with restructuring and trying to make our town a little bit more sustainable, that I would hope we would be able to bring that position back to full-time.
So good point of clarification, but now the counterpoint is, kind of editorially, I'm asking, who would come to fill a part-time position? Unless you're speaking interim.
Yes.
A part-time position, knowing that it's going to end in a couple of years and it's going to be a full-time position. I think
I'm talking
that-
interim.
So you might think that that's easy, I might think that that's challenging.
I think we're in a position where we're going to need a long-term interim, pretty much anyways, just because of the job market right now. And there's been a lot of towns around us that have had turnover, so I don't think that there's probably a lot of options out there in terms of finding a permanent town administrator. So I think we're going to be looking at a long-term interim anyways, and an interim position I'd suggest you could do this with.
So by long-term, are you looking at 1 year, 2 year, 3 years?
I think that depends on the candidate.
Excuse me?
I think that depends on the candidate.
I would say a minimum of one.
It would be a minimum of one, especially if it gets funded at this level. Even if it gets funded greater, I mean, realistically, and I'm not saying we would do this, but it'd be up to the whole board, obviously. But you could fund it at the full amount, and the board could still choose to go with an interim at halftime.
Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll move that we fund this at 50%, which is, I'm getting the number right here.
Number being 66,199?
Yeah. So moved.
And just a point of clarification, that 5,000 that's there right now is added in for the town administrator search firm, would be added to the 5,000 that is in the repurpose article further down, so that it would be a total of 10,000.
Yeah.
No issue there.
Motion's been made.
No second.
I'll second it.
Second's been made. Any discussion? Heather?
Mark, can we just move so that 5,000, if it's going for the search firm, it should be in purchase services, not the salary? So, and I know this is just more of a internal piece, but if residents are looking at this later, that way they know. So I'm just gonna make that adjustment. Thank you.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm opposed. Motion carries. Select Board, which is kind of part and parcel to what's just now been cited on the town administrator. So I think, in all due respect, I think the order was right to do it as we did it. My only concern here is, well, I think it's a understandable step forward in balancing the budget. I'm not in favor of a step increase freeze. And it could well be that some of those that are impacted by it are glad that their job is restored or saved or hours are restored, but I just think it's a bad message. I think you have collective bargaining agreements which guarantee raises to others. This is not a particular area in this one, and by the way, step increases is raised a number of other times throughout the budget. I just think it's a bad message. I think it's going to be a competitive salary issue going forward if any of these people that are subject to the freeze leave. And I recall only very recently the Collins report that did a study and spoke of the step increase was the bomb, and now we're deserting that. I just not in favor of the step increase freeze for this position and the 4 or 5 others that I see elsewhere. I think it's blatantly unfair that this segment of our staffing in town is subject to a freeze and none of the others are. So, my 2 cents.
I think that's a fair-minded position. Are you comfortable with restoring this position back to full-time?
Well, let me answer it differently. I'm inclined to have to like what is in the select board because of the decision that was just passed on the town administrator. So by that, like might be
I understand.
the wrong choice of words, but am I inclined to be compelled to support it? Yes, but I don't like the freeze, the step freeze.
Got it.
Do we happen to know what that amount would be, Heather?
About 65,919. It's, I put it up on the board, I unfroze when people were talking, FY '26 FinCom, that was the final voted number.
Yeah.
So that's what we'd restore it to if you want to include
So
the
I,
increase.
So you're talking about $1,500. Did I do that quick math correctly?
Right? Yeah. But
got it.
total, looking at the sheet yesterday, there's $6,656 in step increases and wage freezes. So if you're gonna do one, you're gonna do them all. If you wanna be fair, you gotta be
Yeah.
fair.
And when we get down there, we'll do that.
No, I'm just,
Yeah, no.
we go down this road, we're going down this road. I mean, it's, you
Yeah,
can't do
no,
one,
I
you
agree.
can't,
No,
you can't
I
really
agree.
do one at a time, you've
Yep.
gotta do them all.
I'd also like to mention that that was based on my quick understanding of who was subject to step increases.
Yeah.
And I could be missing people with that number. So that 6656 is probably not capturing all of it.
Right.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, that's probably.
So we'll restore them and then we'll go from there. So I move that we accept this, this budget with this line item here with, for the select board with the position restored to full-time and the step increase.
And that gives you what, Heather, for the number again, I'm sorry? 60,
65,519.
519.
sorry, wrong number. I was looking at the bottom line.
91,243.
91,643.
So there's been a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? No.
I'm in favor.
Opposed, none. Abstentions, none. It passes.
Got it.
Town accountant. Even though she said she could do her work in less hours if nobody talked with her, that notwithstanding, I would recommend that these be added back, but that the step increase be added back as well. Do you have that step increase number, Heather?
34,330. Total is budgeted 35,013.
Picking up on Jeremy's, if we do it for one, we need to do it for all.
Yeah, I don't, I-
So is there a motion?
Motion to keep 1135 store hours, give the step back, total of 35,013.
Second.
Discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Assessors? Suggested that it be held just so that we could give the elimination of the committee compensation its proper attention. We've spoken for a number of meetings that that should be a place that we should go, and now we have done so, and now the rubber hits the road. So the question is there a motion to approve this with the elimination of the committee compensations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Jeff, you wanted to hold the treasurer collector?
Yeah, the only reason I held this was, I know we were looking at the accountant, so I didn't know if there was a specific reason to compare the two, but that's all. If no one else is in,
Okay.
this
Is
is,
there a motion now to move it forward?
yes, yep, so moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It passes. Legal services. Again, an easy target to try to look to cut. I would remind everybody that regarding legal services, not the tax title, but the general, regular, run-of-the-mill legal services, in this budget, it's budgeted at $16,525. We're going to spend $16,525 in the month of May and June, this year alone. And I know that there are a lot of extenuating circumstances and some items that are going to be not with us all of FY26, but I would submit to you, I wonder whether or not they're all going to be resolved by June 30th, 2025. Keeping in mind that a month or so ago, the Finance Committee went on record that this number should be $30,000. Now it's $22,525. And I think mention was made that if they go over, it goes to the reserve fund. I would submit to you that that's not a reserve fund criteria. Not budgeting for something doesn't default to the reserve fund. The reserve fund is for extraordinary and unforeseen generally emergent situations. Not budgeting for something to balance the budget doesn't qualify for a reserve fund request. So if that's the fallback position, I think that should be reconsidered. I personally think this number is too low. However, it defaults somewhat to the select board to tell us it's okay. But I think history, and Heather, I dare ask whether or not you have any history, but it strikes us that it's always fully budgeted, fully exhausted, and every year they come to the reserve fund to bail them out, and we basically say, well, it's a bill we gotta pay, even though it doesn't qualify for reserve fund criteria. What choice do we have? So we pay it. I think it's too low. And I know we're trying to go the other way, but I'm just being a realist here. I think it's too low. He said to dead silence.
Yeah. Well, I would yield to the select board on this a little bit. I think we had talked about $1,000 amount, if I recall.
And there was, I think we talked, there was a lot of CBA involvement this year. We had a lot of different requirements for the legal and as far as all the bargaining agreement, things that went on. Does that look lighter next year?
Yes.
It's a crapshoot
Did we
to me. I mean,
did we get a verbal response to that question?
We did.
Yes.
Yeah, Judy answered.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So you believe that 22,525 is the correct number?
I don't think anybody can say what the correct number is. I think we're thinking we can manage with that number.
Okay.
We don't want to be held accountable if that doesn't come out.
Things can change.
We haven't got a crystal ball either.
Maybe litigation.
So I'm just going to ask questions. So what's our ballpark did we spend on legal so far this year?
If you give me 1 second, I'm just going to pull up the 5-year forecast, so it should have historical.
Interesting.
All right, so in FY '20, we spent 17,009. FY '21 was 26. FY '22 was 14,9. FY '23 was 22,7. 24, I have here as 23,5, but I don't think that's the updated one. That was the estimate at the time. And then 25, I had estimated on this thing, 26. So if you go with the 23 and back, let's see, for those years, the average, oh, hold on, sorry. I have spacer columns. So the spacer columns were adding into the average. It was lowering my average significantly. The average with those cells is about 21,142.
So Heather, is that the legal services and with or without the tax title?
That's both looking together. If I go down just to the detailed version, tax title has ranged. It's been lower, but there were a couple cases that were in court. The other thing to keep in mind on tax title is with the change of law, I think Liz mentioned it in her summary, with the change of tax title laws, she's now required to physically go to properties that she's putting into tax title, which isn't so much, oh great, we're just adding mileage, but it also means that she's gonna have to pay someone to go with her for safety. So keeping that in mind. So the legal services without tax title, FY '20 was 13,7, FY '21, 19, FY '22, 10, 23 was 18, 24, I don't have an actual here, but we had estimated 15, and in 18, we had estimated 18. We're above that.
A lot above that.
Yeah, but this was just the financial
Understood.
forecast, not the, so if you average
Take
just
those
those
averages.
figures, that is
Well-
about 15,085. So it's in the ballpark. You know, as Julie had stated, it was brought up by Mark as well, we have a lot less things currently on the docket for next year. That being said, there's unknowns that we don't always anticipate. And sometimes we get caught up in those. But for next year, we don't have any, I think we're all done all collective bargaining units. I think we have one department head contract, the DPW one, I think is the only one that's up. And then
And no CBAs for next year?
no, I think we're CBA free. We did one last year and two this year, and they're 3 years.
Thank you.
I'm comfortable with the two, you know, based on what I've heard, I'm comfortable with the 2022.
Again,
You never know.
I don't, yeah, you don't know. That information makes me feel better, but
Yeah.
not great, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Motion to
Yeah. To,
Second.
yeah.
second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'll defer to the select board and vote aye. Any noes? None. Any abstentions? None. MIS, IT. The only, not that I respond to the rumor mill, but you can't hide from it. I asked for it to be held because I hear all the time that there's savings to be had in that department. So I need somebody to tell me that that's not at all the case.
There's no way to reduce it any further to what you're at. This already reflects a slight reduction in our Office 365 licenses. So next year, come April, May, when we renew the licenses, we're gonna have to pull back on who has a town license. So unless you're essentially a full-time person, we may have to pull back on those licenses there. This has the Acronis, which is the backup and everything for our computers. This does not have any extra equipment, let alone extra equipment. So if anything breaks, it's not budgeted in here. So there's nothing extra in these numbers. This is our, you have your OpenGov, which is the permitting software, which is about $18,000. I already pulled out the website, checked with Nick from Cable Committee, and he thinks we can, again, continue covering the cost of that out of the cable, so we don't have to take care of it out of the town. The numbers are reduced to pretty much as low as we can. We still have an outside vendor providing the service. You could get rid of them, but if you do that, you're gonna have a problem with your cybersecurity liability insurance.
Because you don't have any, but we don't have it. You don't have it, right? Heather, could you
That's not a good.
toggle that down just a bit?
This way?
Yeah, just so we can see all of.
Oh, you know what the problem is? My screen's on freeze. Sorry.
So Heather, the reduction is 12.81
Yes.
and not 18.25.
Correct. And before I even started pulling from it, I already took out the initial funds we had talked about, which were the computer replacement program and the near map. So once taken that $20,000 out, this is further reductions from that. So it's really well more than 12.81% from the original FinCom approved number that had some of the out of guidance stuff in it. But before I even started tackling this, I took the out of guidance out of the IT.
Okay. Is there a motion? Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Town clerk. I asked for it to be held. I have two things. One is the freeze in the step increase needs to be recalibrated here too. But I'm also reminded the sub-account in the town clerk department of 1261, 5103, which is assistant town clerk wages. It was mentioned last night on one of our one pages that there's an inconsistency in application of administrative assistants. One of them is being eliminated in fire. This one's not being replaced in town clerk. and yet others to continue to exist in police and DPW, and of course, we just spoke about select board. So what's the feeling of the inconsistency of this? It seems to me that there should be some consistent application. Why is one having to eliminate a position and one not allowed to fill one and others are allowed to retain those? I don't know what the answer is, but of 4 departments, we've got 3 different directions that we're going here. That's all point that I'm raising and question that needs to be addressed.
I'd like to make a comment if I could, sir.
Yeah.
You certainly can, Travis.
DPW's water and DPW.
Travis Tebow from the Paxton DPW, Director here in town. You're bringing up the admins. I would just like to say to anyone that's not already aware, in my personal opinion, we don't have an admin. Her position is office manager. I can tell you she does much more than what an admin does. In my opinion, I can't do my job without that position being filled full-time properly. Without all of my staff, we're already losing another staff member. In order for me to have to cut another staff member, it would destroy the department. Okay, so what she does, above and beyond just doing your typical admin duties such as payroll, warrants, she's assisting and/or completely doing reports to Mass DOT, Mass DEP, and the EPA, stuff that I can't do all alone because of our time constraints and the amount of work that we have to do. So again, in my opinion, our admin is not an admin. Frankly, when we retitled her position, I recommended that the title be changed to Assistant Director for the department, and that was shut down on me because of the work she does. On top of those items, she's also managing the cemetery for the town, so she does all the burial permits. She's on site at the cemetery occasionally, getting pertinent information on where burials are, as well as monument information. The list goes on. I couldn't say enough how above and beyond an admin our staff is. That's why I did not cut that line item. It was given to us, the percentage of what we had to cut and where we needed to cut. I didn't feel as though I could run my department without that position in full.
Travis, well said, but let me just interject. I think you completely misunderstood my point. My point was not to go to DPW and eliminate the position. Because we've all pledged to this when we started this, we didn't want to eliminate any. I'm actually talking about 2 other departments other than yours, and that is, why is one not allowed to replace one of their positions, and why is one decided or required to eliminate theirs, not looking to displace yours at all. So your point was well made, and we know it full well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Quick question, is that position compensated at all from the cemetery?
No, all of our compensation line item was cut from the cemetery budget last year or the year previous in order to make life a little bit easier, I guess. Her salary or her hourly wage is split between the water department and the highway department, 50-50.
So just to clarify, when Travis said cut, I think what he meant was moved up to the DPW budget. We didn't cut the funding for the wages. We just relocated them so it was easier to appropriate out of.
So in that salary, in her salary breakdown, is there a percentage that's water and a percentage that's DPW?
It's 50-50.
So 50% of her time is spent DPW, 50% of her time.
What you see reflected on the spreadsheet, Jeremy, is just the DPW salary. Okay.
And I do a lot overtime for her because, for many reasons. One, our payroll is a nightmare from the months of October through May. Pay week ends on a Saturday night. We're required to get that information in Monday morning. It takes 4 or 5, sometimes 6 hours for us to complete payroll with the amount of hours, the constant rolling of employees that are going out. You know, we may be out 3 times in a night above and beyond our typical 8-hour workday due to icy roads conditions and/or water main breaks. Not that the water main breaks is coming from this budget, but we still maintain that. That still has to be accounted for. So on top of that, you know, when we've had emergencies, I depend on her to make the reverse 911 or code red calls for our department above and beyond the regular working hours, because I'm out in the field, frankly, with our staff. You know, I'm not sitting in an office only working 8 to 4 every day or 9 to 5. I'm out with my staff on water main breaks, plowing roads. So I don't have the time or the ability to do that when I'm tied up in a trench or on a machine helping my staff.
But I think, if I can, I think, Mark, you bring up a fair point. I think this conversation, when we have additional discussion about restructuring and looking at the town in general and how our operating posture, this would be a good one for that conversation.
Yeah, I think, again, we've heard that a number of times, and while we like hearing it every time, you never have to say it. We're sold. So no need to do that. My position, quite frankly, is what's the fallback alternative position of not having one in the town clerk? That's my question. There's been a compelling argument that there could be some dire consequences if illness or other absence befalls the town clerk on a key critical period. So my question is, where do we go if that happens? We can't reschedule an election. We might be able to reschedule a town meeting, but we can't reschedule an election. Is there something regionally that can be shared, or what other safety net safeguard do we have?
So some towns have different positions that are part-time or full-time, where people take on additional backup roles, where they can be the assistant town clerk or the assistant treasurer collector, they help out as needed. I know we had a shared position one point in time, that's what it was, but I'm not sure what the final outcome is. This would probably be best with an engaged dialogue with Lori.
Where's the select board sit on this particular issue, this department, without an assistant town clerk?
You want to start?
So we've operated with a single town clerk for quite a long time. We haven't had the opportunity to see what happens if the town clerk were to be unfortunately ill at the time of a major event like a town election. We have had the assistant town clerk in place, but I would tell you that I don't think that any of the assistant town clerks we've had in place would have been able to take over for our regular town clerk at any of these events.
And I believe Lori testified that this year she thought she could get through without an assistant.
That's correct.
She did. She, I think, made a compelling argument for the need for it, but in the spirit of what we're all trying to do and work together and balance the budget, she did say that. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're not cutting our nose to spite our face, and I think long-term, there could be a whole future look at consolidating some of these and restructuring some of these.
Yeah.
So enough said. So
Also,
Heather,
just
do
to
you-
note real quick on your comment, the police is cutting their admin's hours dramatically
Yeah.
in this budget. So, I mean, it's like 40%.
So what about the freeze step increase amount here, Heather? Have you calculated it?
Yes, I already restored it back. Sorry, I can't see my screen there. So it would be back to the 55,279. So the total,
We're talking
Yeah,
about the
just-
town clerk.
yeah, it's right here,
Yeah,
right?
town clerk,
P.
55,279.
He's 67, right?
Mark,
Sir.
question.
Mark, I have a question. Sandy Fields, Nannigan Lane. So we're talking about contingency planning. It doesn't seem like we really have something in place, especially for a role as significant as the town clerk. And we're talking about elections, and I think what we've all learned over the past few years is how much money an election can cost us. So for us to not have a contingency plan, if there was to be, a leave of absence that occurred or some type of unforeseen circumstances, to not have a backup plan, whether that is another existing member of our overall Paxton, town employee community, or have an assistant town clerk who can step up and perform those activities. I feel like we're just engaging in another exercise of stealing from Peter to pay Paul. And we could not have a town clerk, we could have some, due to an unforeseen circumstance, and we could incur an expense of an election that doesn't happen, but has to be paid for because of the expenses that go along with that. And then the added expense of then having to have that election again at an additional cost. So just food for thought on going through this and the approach that we're looking at for departments that really have that critical type of role on a specific day where if something catastrophic happens, how are we still able to carry on the activity of that day? Thank you.
Yeah, I was just, I think that, thank you very much. I think that's a great point. I don't support adding back the assistant town clerk for this, but I think that is a great point. I do contingency planning for a living, and our town clerk is what we call a SPOF, single point of failure.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's, when we have these restructuring conversations, that's something we should look at. That should be a pillar of that conversation about addressing some of these. So I'm all for that, but I think in this case, we can, I'm comfortable, especially the town clerk is comfortable.
So to your point, yes, we need a contingency plan. To our point, it's not in this budget right now, it's
Yeah.
for future considerations.
Yeah,
So,
and a
point
great-
well made.
Yep.
If I may I real quick, Mr. Lowe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, that we're going to have to put contingency plans in place, and it's going to be a point for the very near future. Because with what we're doing with the budget, there are going to be a number of places where we're going to have to say, all right, if this happens, then what do we do? So I just want people to know that this doesn't end on June 16th. June 16th is really the kickoff at that point.
That's well said. Well said.
Good enough. Is there a motion for the town clerk with the step increase added back?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. It passes. Bob, you want to speak to the Conservation Commission? Do you have a mic?
You got a bike right
You can sit right there and just grab a mic.
Okay. So I believe, we're discussing the budget for our agent. I don't know if this is doing anything. Okay. I just want to explain how much we need the agent, because, we've lost some members who had more expertise since I've been on the commission. We don't really have a deep reservoir of knowledge about how to get things done. Jim Robert, the chair, has been on the longest and does certainly have a lot of knowledge, but there's, so having some expertise is really helpful when we have residents or people who are, wanting to build in town come to discuss various plans for dealing with wetlands on their property. Our current agent, Doug Dillon, is very knowledgeable. He works full-time as an agent for another town, and it's the kind of thing where, we don't have him for many hours as it is. It's really just a few hours a month. And if that was reduced, it's very, very likely that he couldn't continue to find that to be worth his time. We spent a very long time searching for him when our previous agent left. And during that time when we were between agents, we were just kind of barely managing to get things done. Mike Voorhees, the previous chair, did a lot. It burnt him out, and now he's gone. So without an agent, we're just a bunch of people who want to, contribute to the town. We have some training that we do, a couple of times a year, but it's not like, getting a bachelor's degree in environmental studies, which, is quite a lot more expertise than really anybody else has. That our agent is very knowledgeable. So I'd really like to not have that position reduced, because then we'll be searching for somebody who and we actually had hired somebody in the interim who didn't last very long because it was so part-time as it is. So if it's even less time, which we need, we need the time. Usually, lately there hasn't been too many. There haven't been too many new projects that involve wetlands in town, but I don't think that's going to continue forever. We're in a bit of a lull, but like all these other considerations that you've been discussing for other items in the budget, we expect to be busier in the future, and it will come down to a few people who barely, know how to do it and don't have the time, who are doing it as volunteers to get. There's a lot of paperwork involved, and filling out the orders of conditions and all the other papers that Doug does. So I don't know if you want to add anything, Billy, to the question, but
It'd be pretty difficult to function without
Well, Bob, I think you went full circle, because at the beginning, I thought you had a sense that we were eliminating the position, and we're not. And what has happened is that a directive or a request went out to all the boards and commissions and departments to reduce the budget by 18.25%. And the agent came back with that. So we're not going deeper than that. But I think if we speak to the point that we should only reduce yours by 10%, then we need to revisit all the other ones that came in at 18.25%. So I think, well, your point's well made, and we see the merits. You've been blessed with two very good agents, Mia McDonald and Mr. Dillon. And they do add immeasurably to the workload and your site visits and all the things that you do. But I don't see where there's room to give, pardon the expression, give the conservation special treatment where we wouldn't be compelled to have to go to all the other ones and do the same thing. So it's only been reduced at what we've asked all the town budgets and cost centers to do. So I don't want you to feel you've been unfairly treated as much as it's painful and it's unfair to everybody, but it was equal, so. Heather?
I think the concern with the Conservation Commission is because it is such both a part-time position and such a niche, it's really hard to find someone to fill it. It's only about 4 hours a week. And I know that it's a really small cut of only a couple $1,000s reduction, but that makes a difference on whether or not it could be worth the person's time to continue doing that role of performing that function and serving in that role. And I think that's the concern of the Conservation Commission, is that they want to make sure that they have someone. This is not a position that, you know, you post online and you get 75 people who are interested and, you know, 74 are qualified. This is the position you post out there, you might get 3, and of the 3, maybe you're lucky and 1 is qualified. Last time we did this was when I first started, right after Mia was here, and then there was someone in between for like a hot second, and then Doug was the candidate. I want to say he was the only person we actually ended up interviewing, so our fingers were crossed that he was going to be the right fit, and he worked out really well. But I think that's Conservation's concern, is that they have a large burden to carry, and they really benefit from the expertise of a professionalized agent. There's not a lot of them out there. There's definitely probably not one you're going to be able to even regionalize for less of a cost than what we currently pay.
Could it be added back in just for on a contingent basis, just as we go through the discussion with the understanding we might have to circle back? The only other concern I have is, I mean, a lot of people might make the same argument that, you know, people didn't, you know, obviously they're hard to replace. I think this is a very specific case, and I think we understand it, but maybe we add it back in on a contingent basis, knowing that we might have to go back and take it out. And then the only thing I want to keep track of is anything we're adding back in and reducing that percentage, that we're tracking that towards the inequitable, you know, cuts that impact the library, you know, when we get there. So I don't think we've done that. So if anything, we've gone in the opposite direction. But anything, I just want to be careful that we're, you know, not adding to that burden.
So if you look at that, is what is in the budget for the position is $5760. If I hear you right, the consideration is to go back to $70,068?
Well, I'm sure he'd love the increase of the additional 60,000, but I think just 7,068 is, we'll put it.
By some $1,300, does anybody have a calculator to give us the exact number? And we could vote it at the 5760, or we could vote it at the 7,068 contingent upon revisiting it.
Well, I move that we put it in for the 7,068 and we'll revisit.
Motion's been made.
If I can add just a quick comment, I do think that having the conservation agent available at the hours that they typically have them available also helps you keep your legal fees down.
Yeah, yeah, oh, great. So I made a motion, we have a second.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Second.
So that puts that line item at 8128?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Thank you. Economic Development Committee. Zeros. You originally put in 700 and then it did get booted out. Is there an argument or a case for it to be 700 or 500 or remain at zero?
Yeah, if you don't mind me speaking on this, obviously, like, I'd love to have the $700, but when I look around the room and see everything we're doing, if I had 70,000, I'd give it back this year. So we absolutely can live without the $700 this year. It's not ideal, but nothing ideal this year.
Okay.
No problem staying at zero.
Wanted to give you a chance to say that.
I appreciate that.
Is there a motion to move economic development forward at zero?
So moved.
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, abstentions? None. Charter Review Committee. I'm just an advocate. They originally requested $2,000. It was in one of the budgets, and now it's at zero. I just said, I think last night, I'll say again tonight, they're doing yeoman's work. They have a huge project ahead of them to revamp and restructure the charter. They're looking for perhaps postage, maybe some survey costs and the like. It was a small ask. Maybe $2,000 is too rich, but I think something would demonstrate to us that we like what we're seeing and we want you to keep going. And if it's going to cost some small dollars to get us the model charter that they're hell-bent on getting, I think it's worth considering. So, or it remains at zero. The Charter Review Committee reports to the Select Board. The Charter Review Committee is appointed by the Select Board. It was on, I think, the Select Board and the Town Administrator's goals and objectives. So the question is, their ask is small, and we comply and meet them halfway, or do we close the door? I'm in favor of something.
Julie, I'm going to let you speak to this. This is something that the board appointed before Chris and I came on board.
I think that the Charter Review Committee would like to have the $2,000, but I think that this year it's probably not in the cards. They're a pretty resourceful group. They've been doing a nice job of trying to, put together their collective effort to get beyond the fact that they don't have a budget.
They are resourceful. They even found me at Theo's trying to get a sandwich with a flyer. So you can escape. So, what's that? Oh, come on. That,
So is there a motion for a number or a zero?
Well, we can dial it back if we need to. I'll move that we fund this at 1,000.
And is that one of those we revisit?
Yes.
Can we ask them it could be that 1,000 is not enough and 2,000 is what they need. I don't know what they must be for something specific. So maybe we should ask them exactly what they need rather than just saying 1,000 is going to be.
Did they have specific targets for what, was it going to be used for mailings? Was it going to be used for?
I thought it was mailings, but I don't
So you may,
recall.
Mailing,
maybe not
surveys, postage.
Yeah, I mean, if they're doing a
Not
town
all
by
or nothing.
mailing, they need the kind of, I don't know. I could go either way.
I don't know, I'd defer to Julia, actually, if we're adding, we're going north here.
Yeah.
And if the committees, again, they're innovative and okay with doing it with zero, I almost propose keeping it at zero.
All right, I think that's where we're at. It's unfortunate.
I know.
What's that? Yeah, it's unfortunate, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're doing great work.
I mean,
And
knowing them, if they needed a amount, I would think somebody would be, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but if they were really fighting for a certain amount of this, I think they'd come be here like fighting for it, Because that's a very resourceful group, unless you feel that. I'd defer to you too if there's something they need. Not to put all the pressure on you.
No, I actually was able to speak to one, not the whole group, but one of them earlier today to ask about that, and he seemed to agree that they're pretty resourceful.
Okay.
I'm going to withdraw my motion. I'll move it at zero. I think it's unfortunate, but that's where we're at.
Motion to move it at zero. It's been made. Second?
Second.
Tim,
Second.
seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. I'd like to skip over police, if you don't mind, do fire. And I think mention has been made that in this particular schedule that we're seeing, that there's $67,000 of additional ambulance receipts that have been added to the revenue side, allowing for positions to be added here. And if I understand, the 67,000 is now 90,000, is that correct?
Yeah, so,
190?
let me just grab the mic here, so. Yeah, so I was able to up it to about 90,000 with the hopes of moving pretty much all of my line items from the ambulance lease up, including, I believe, 35,000 in purchase services, over to the ambulance receipts, so I can operate with the $1,040,000 budget for essentially compensation for the chief and the employees, plus 35,000 in purchase services, which would come off the current ambulance receipts, and the 400,000 in the taxpayer funds, and then 90,000 would cover lease equipment, supplies, and purchase services for the ambulance and other various fire stuff. So that's what I had figured out with Heather anyways, I sent over to Heather.
Chief, only because it's been mentioned, what about your administrative assistant position?
Just because I had to reduce payroll, unfortunately, if my admin, awesome guy, does a lot for me, love him to death, he's not certified to put on fire gear or jump on an ambulance, so that's got to be a dual role position at this point. When we rework this department top to bottom, and moving on in the future, maybe we could find something, but I couldn't in good faith keep the admin and not someone that can work on the ambulance or work on a fire truck.
Okay, there's a motion.
The only question I have, kind of a broad question, we're adding a lot back, so I think we want to, without looking at some of these larger departments, I don't know I'm not sure where we're going to end up, so I'd kind of be interested to see where we're at. Heather, anybody?
Well, we've added some step increases, and we've added some contingency amounts, so I don't know exactly where we are, because we started at 34, and then we brought it down to 11, and we brought it back up. Hopefully, somebody was keeping some tabulation, so.
So we do have one adjustment to make, and that's in the revenue side. So in the revenue sheet that was part of this down below, unfortunately, we did account for the road improvement in the revenue twice. It was already included in that 13,058,486 number. So because of that, our balance right now is negative 139,024. So we're out of balance by $139,024.
Now, question.
Yes.
Does that,
Oh, I can probably show it, sorry.
no, you don't have to.
I scrolled down. No.
Is that 139, is that operating with numbers at police and fire for 24/7 coverage?
Yes, I believe it's 1 firefighter and 1.5 police.
Two, yeah,
Okay.
I think it was supposed to be two. but
Okay,
yeah.
so we're still looking for 139K. Okay. Just getting the scope on that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
What's your wish?
Nothing at this time. Good, my question's been answered.
No, but in terms of.
Oh, on fire, I'm sorry, back to fire.
Yeah.
Mike, if this number correct, this allows you the proper staffing?
Yeah, I'll have to adjust the wages and move everything below, but that's the number plus the 90,000.
Got it. So moved to accept as is.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Second, any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, abstentions? None. It passes. Tree warden. Tim, speaking of going north, we're budgeting this at 0. Again, an easy target, but
Yeah, the challenge I have with doing this at 0, it seems to me like inevitably we're going to have tree work that needs to be done. So can we even practically do that? I mean, is it really realistic? More of a question than an answer.
this assumes that the tree warden, I think, is on the call. This assumes,
Yes, he is.
He unfortunately had to just hop off for a work appointment.
yep.
Okay.
That was him dinging out.
This out.
So this assumes that either nothing's going to happen, or if it does happen, that we can't fund it out of the tree warden budget, which goes back to the reserve fund, which I would argue that it's not extraordinary and unforeseen if you should have budgeted for it and you didn't.
We've spent $423 this year to date on tree warden.
$423?
$423.
So you have to remember that we had the original, I believe, ARPA funds from the fall before we got to December that we had appropriated as well.
How much was that?
I can look. It was a couple $1,000s, under 5, I think.
Okay.
Donna, do you
That's
remember?
helpful.
Okay. But so whenever there's been tree work to date, Kirk has been pulling from there first, yeah.
Okay.
And I would expect that he's going to use every dime of
Yeah, I
what's
was
there
saying.
before June
Still got
30th.
another
I
26.
understand what year-to-date is, but I would bet the farm, he's going to spend every nickel of it.
2602 left.
Do we maximize like internal departments that can help, like the light department? I know we're not in a position to be asking the DPW to do more, obviously, but how's that? I mean, they have some capabilities like that, but I don't know what the limitations are. Is that maxed out?
Right, so the light department's aspect of this is really just clearing branches that overhang the light.
Right. And that's because,
Infrastructure, yeah.
could they do more if we needed them to, or is it, I mean, could it be an arrangement where they do more?
I think that's a discussion you'd have to have with the light department.
Okay, yeah.
So we are also part of a coalition, 5-town coalition with a tree service truck. Seems as though the majority of the times we get it, there's issues with the truck and it needs to go back out for repair. But we do have that ability. We did just get 2 more staff members trained in that over the course of the winter to utilize that bucket truck. So everybody's aware, we have a running tally of trees that we are aware of that should be taken down. That's somewhere between 200 and 250 trees, street trees that are town-owned trees that should be removed today.
I think a couple of points here. I would support putting this at 4,100. I think it's just reasonable. I don't know, Jeremy, are you coming up with something much lower?
No.
Yeah,
No, I'm not coming up with anything. I mean, again,
okay.
There's trees that need to come down. Some of those trees are going to come down when they come down. Some of them are going to present a hazard emergency that needs to be dealt with immediately. You can only, no, time doesn't tell how long you can wait on a tree, right? That's the problem.
I'd be inclined to put this back at 4,100. We may have to revisit it the rate we're going here. But I think Tony also brings up a fair point about the light department. I understand it's a totally separate entity, but it's also a total separate entity that's owned by the ratepayers of this community. I support putting this back at 4,100. I think you raised a great point for further discussion. Not tonight, but...
So off point, but for future consideration, we're the only town in all of central Massachusetts whereby the tree warden is not either somebody on the light department or DPW.
Yeah.
And if you look at our chart of organization, ours is out in left field that reports only to the electorate, doesn't report to anybody, the select board, town administrator. So I think in the future, speaking of consolidating and the like, I think that there's something that should be done in that regard. I think Travis said, I don't mean to misquote him, but 243 trees. Somebody at one time said we have a $210,000 problem immediately.
Yeah.
So to budget nothing is just begging the question and begging for trouble.
Yeah.
So I think as a minimum, Tim, sorry to say, going north, I think we ought to put something in, and if we have to circle back, we'll circle back.
So moved to 4,100 tree award.
Motion second? Yep. Any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, abstentions? None.
Just for clarification, because I think I blinked, which numbers are we going for? The compensation 1,000, purchase services 3,100, or purchase services 4,100?
That should just,
No, the trees should be 4,100.
Okay, just in purchase
The compensation
services.
went south.
Okay. Well, you're talking about
All right.
north, so I was getting confused.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
and even if the 4,100, that's
Okay.
16%, 17%.
16.75?
16.75% reduction. Okay,
Oh, my screen's not showing.
I got it.
All right, Travis, now you're on. DPW. I don't know what to say. That budget has now been reduced by 22.07%. I don't know what to say. I think it's way too low. It's gone from 902,000 down to 703. And I know we need to balance the budget, but wow. And you have been forthright and good a number of times that you'll make it work with the money that you have. But this could only be described as super bare bone minimum. So, come on up, Travis, and tell us where you can make some further cuts. Yeah, please. I mean that facetiously.
To start, if you're looking to have the DPW cut down to 22.07%, we're going back to what was budgeted between FY19 and FY20 for the DPW. Just to make that clear, this is not going back to FY24 or 25. You're going back several years. It's going to drastically impact the way the departments run. We're already losing a staff member. And I just want to point out the fact that the DPW is the only staff that's expected to work 24/7 all the time. In the winter months, we do it regularly for snow plowing. I can tell you just this past year, we had a 48-hour storm, and 6 hours later, we had a 24-hour water main break repair. Me and 3 of my other staff members didn't sleep for 3 days and worked pretty much nonstop. I don't think that that's fair of the town to expect that of any one person. But we do it. My staff does it willingly and without hesitation every time I call. I think there's a great underappreciation for this department. Frankly, it's a little heartbreaking when I'm seeing or hearing that we're looking to do a deeper cut to our department and a much less drastic cut to other departments for the same reason, that they're short-staffed. I've been saying for years that we're short-staffed since I took over this position, and to me, it feels as though it falls on deaf ears. My staff go above and beyond every single day to the best of their ability. We do everything that we can for this town. They sacrifice. We don't have a wonderful facility to work out of such as this. You know, we have 10 staff members. We're expected to work 2-3 days nonstop without sleep, to share one toilet, and our break room is a 4x4 piece of plywood table in the back of a couple of bays. But that's what's expected of us. And my staff does this willingly and without hesitation every time I call them. I understand that there's a burden that needs to be borne amongst everybody here in town, and I'll gladly do our fair share, but I think it needs to be said that you're asking more of us than any of the other departments. I don't think that's fair of the town. I think that burden should be shared equally. With that said, we'll do whatever we can. You folks give us the money, we'll do what we can with what we're given to the best of our ability. But I'm not going to stop getting up here and telling you that the department is underappreciated, underfunded, and understaffed. Okay, because I feel as a department head, managing these staff, that's my duty to do so. Okay? It kills me to have to get up here and say this stuff to you folks, because I don't want to have to do that. And I know nobody wants to put us in this position either, but if you're looking for us to make a 22.07% cut, I'll do whatever I'm asked to do. It's going to hurt. If we have equipment that goes down and it has to stay down, expect that's what's going to happen. The one other thing that I would like to mention before I'll kind of stop my rant from there is we have the Stormwater Enterprise Fund that will be voted on at this year's town meeting. If that doesn't pass, you're looking at us still having to cover those costs. Last year, we were a minimum of $100,000 to cover the bare minimum costs of what the MS4 requirements are. So just keep that in mind. If you cut us 22.07%, that fails, you're really cutting us another $100,000 on top of that, because that's what we're going to have to take out of the budget in order to meet the MS4 requirements. Okay, so I'm here for any questions. Like I said, if that's what you're looking for us to cut, we'll do whatever we have to do to make it work. I'll make it work. But our staff and our departments asked a lot of us, and I think they do a fair job, a fine job, I'm sorry, of trying to take care of this town, and that they should be applauded, not asked to cut deeper.
Travis and, excuse me, Julie, Travis and Heather, the water department is an enterprise fund and you cross over. Is there any help on the water department side that could alleviate some of this, could some of the costs that you have here be pushed?
They do now. They do already. Yeah, you may not see it, but when we're on a water main break, the water department covers the salary of those staff members that are doing that work. I attempt to budget everything as fairly as I possibly can and break everything down as much as I possibly can. When highway staff does water department work, the water department pays for them.
So you're right, we may not see that, because the truth of the matter is we don't see that, because it's not part of the town budget, because it's outside of that purview, because it's part of it's its own enterprise fund.
But it is in the water department budget, which I provide to the finance committee.
Yep. Julia, you had your hand up to speak?
Yes. So, in looking at the spreadsheet, two things I wanted to address. The first was that we found out last night that Travis had already eliminated summer help.
Right.
And so we need to add that back in, and that amount is
$72.60. Right.
Yep. And then if you are looking at giving back step increases and et cetera for other staff, then I think if you add that back in, then the reduction percent goes to 20.89%.
Do we have the step increase number, Heather?
It's 67 cents per hour.
Yeah, it just goes back to that 35.96.
So that 3596 comes off the 27, so that's a combined number there for OT and
Yes,
Correct.
yes, sir.
So,
OT was about $2,000, give a little over $2,000 for 80 hours for the year.
so Heather, I know what it goes back to, but what's the math?
So 30,000.
3,300,
So if you refund that, well, it depends. Are we putting back in the OT or leaving the OT out? I'm sorry.
You're looking at a number of 27,263 for overtime and step for one person.
No.
That's a lot of overtime. That's 44% of the pay overtime.
Total compensation for the DPW Administrative Services Manager, including overtime, is, I have budgeted at $60,102. That's including all the overtime.
That includes OT.
Plus?
That includes
That's,
water.
and
That's plus the water.
that's her entire, half of that is what is paid out of highway.
So 3596 is what that line was budgeted at. That includes the OT. I can grab you the specific OT.
Okay, no, so that number, that 27,263 is not right.
No, the 27,263 is what it was reduced to with the step, with the COLA taken out of it and the OT taken out of it. So if you insert both of those numbers.
Understood, my brain was working
That's good.
completely backwards. I was
So-
adding and not subtracting. Thank you
That's
very
okay.
much. Got it.
That being said, am I adding back in the OT or am I leaving the OT out?
I think we've got to do the step. If we're going to do the step, we're going to do the step.
But are we doing the step and the OT or just the step?
I would ask that you leave it to the department head to make the decision. If you're going to cut, let me decide where I'm going to make the cuts, and don't tell me where I'm going to make the cuts.
I think it should be just the step, leave the OT alone.
So leave the OT out?
Yes.
So I think what they're doing, Travis, is they're trying to figure out what the total number they're gonna give in the package, and part of the package is the calculation of which policy or which directions they're going. I just need a second for that, unless you don't have the specific OT number in that, do you, Travis? If not, I can flip to get it, just it's gonna take me a second.
2,000 something.
Total overtime would be 3266, so you'd be looking at half of that.
Okay. I think I had 2,178
33.
in what we had for the budget requests.
So are you able, Heather, to calculate the percentage change with those step increase and summer help add backs?
Yes, it's automatic.
If I may, what are we looking at with all that as a reduction percentage for public works?
That's what she's calculating
Oh, I'm
right
sorry,
now.
okay.
Should be this. It's subtracting. I think this is already pre-formulated, so that should be the number, 2274, but it seems like it's pretty much where it was, so. I'm gonna need a moment to double check that.
But I think we're gonna land at around 20.
Yeah.
So compass notwithstanding, I would remind everybody, we haven't gone to it, but police was reduced by 9%, DPW by over 20%. I'm inclined to make it be 18.25%, just like everybody else. I wish it were less than that, Travis, but at least it's not more.
And I understand, and like I stated, I'm willing to do whatever you folks tell me we have to do, but I think I wouldn't be doing my department or my staff any justice if I didn't stand here and not speak up on their behalf. So,
If it were the difference of balancing the budget or not, I probably wouldn't make that suggestion, but we're not there. So now I'm into the fair and equitable, and I'm not inclined to have one department take a bigger hit than others. Julia?
I just have a question for Travis. So when I look at your purchase services, the FY25 budgeted amount was $139,308, and the requested amount was $295,300, which is about $160,000 additional. Can you explain what the difference is, just to remind us what we're talking about?
Bear with me one moment, please.
I believe it was the out of guidance and the purchase services, that was the distinction, so it included the guardrails, the line painting.
Yep, that's right. So that was 30,000 for street line painting, 47.5 for existing guardrail, and I believe we increased the line item for equipment maintenance due to the extreme expense of the year previously.
So are we, just as clarification, so we are still counting in this purchase services amount that's going towards this 22.74, we are still counting the line painting?
No.
Not.
Line painting has been removed from the budget, as well as replacing the guardrails on the two sections of guardrails on Marshall Street
Yeah.
to a reduced purchase services line item at the
Okay.
18.25 of $202,140.
Okay, I just want to, thank you.
And just a note, from the best of my understanding, yes, Chapter 90 funds can be utilized for line painting, but from my understanding, that's only if we redo the road. That's not to line painting throughout town. After a little bit more research, that's what we're being told we can utilize the funds for line painting. Any other questions?
So I would make a motion that it be recalibrated so that the reduction in the budget be 18.25%.
Travis?
Second.
So, may I?
You may.
So if it's gonna be 18.25%, and we're gonna go back to the proposed 18.25%, then can we just go back to the 18.25% version?
Yeah, 735.
Which is the 90, the numbers as proposed here, so it adds back in the overtime. Unless you want to keep this number and add the difference of that and the overtime to the other one. It also had removed some of the out of guidance, some other elements from that to get down to the 180. So I guess I just want to make sure we're not having three different sets of numbers going. So if we're going to go with the 18.25%, I guess what I'm saying is unless there's a policy reason to do something slightly different or to encourage a line to be a certain way, that we just adopt the current proposed 18.25% version as proposed.
No issue with that.
That was my motion, yep.
Yeah. Yeah,
there a
we don't have a second.
Motion's been made, second, any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, abstentions, none. Travis Cemetery Commission, do you mind?
No, not at all.
The conclusion that we've drawn is people are living longer. And that's why that particular budget's been cut 61.05%.
So I believe I stated this before, but I will state it again. I couldn't justify only an 18% reduction when we're talking about staff members to spread fertilizer and provide water at the cemetery. So my thought process was we eliminated as much as we possibly could in order to assist other departments to make up some of the shortfalls. Those cuts were to shut the water off at the cemetery, remove all the fertilization, remove the line item for stone repairs. I understand that there are a lot of residents or family of residents that visit the cemetery in order to maintain their deceased ones' plots in the cemetery. So, we were attempting to try to think outside the box, so we're going to recommend to the Cemetery Commission that, yes, we shut the water off so that we're not spending that extra few $100s unnecessarily, but in turn, we set up some rain barrels to be able to provide water for the folks that are their water.
So the Cemetery Commission has some special revenue funds, I think there are a couple of them. One are sale of cemetery lots. Is there any relief to this budget that can be looked to and subsidized by those special revenue funds?
To the best of my understanding, the interest that is earned on the perpetual care account is the only allotted funds that cemetery can spend without going to town meeting.
Yeah, okay.
There's a short amount of money there. It's very short, but in my opinion, the cemetery also needs that for any emergencies that may come up, such as stone repairs if we're going to do this.
So in summation, this really took a heavy, heavy hit so that DPW wouldn't need to take as big a hit as it did. Is that safe to summarize?
Yes, yeah, I mean, again, I wasn't just thinking about I wasn't just trying to think about my other departments that we run, but the town in whole.
Yep. Good. Is there a motion at 3595?
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Any discussion? None, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None, abstentions? None. It passes. Jeff, I think you wanted to hold the
Yeah.
Council on Aging.
Just wanted to take a closer look at it. I'm good with moving as is.
So I'm going to abstain, but there's a motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. I abstain. Library. Some good folks from the library are here, and their particular budget decreases. I'm going to do my Reader's Digest version of this is 24.72. If that particular reduction is seen to be disproportionately reduced, which is 5% higher than, I would say, the average being 18.25%, 5% above that is 23.25. We're at 24.72. We are disproportionately reducing this budget, which could put accreditation at risk, which could require a waiver to be submitted to waive that particular accreditation issue. I'm of the opinion, why put ourselves in that position? I think we should work to get it below, as a minimum, below that threshold, so that it's out of harm's way regarding that accreditation and that disproportionately reduced status, and that would cause this to be not reduced by as much as it is reduced. And there's points that have been made here that the hours have been reduced, and by extension, the salaries and wages should correspondingly be reduced, which caused us to go from 42,742 to 32,000 down to 21,000. And custodian wages have been reduced. I'm a big fan of special revenue funds, and I think that there are some that can be restricted only to buildings. Is custodian services part of that particular criteria that would fall under building? You're up, Pam.
Well, we can definitely supplement our building cleaning and our bathroom cleaning of our very busy building with our building maintenance funds. It doesn't help us with the certification issue. I would love to come up here and tell you that we're not stuck in this position of trying to meet the state aid certification. The reason it exists in Massachusetts is to protect libraries, to make sure they get their local minimum funding. If we didn't have that, could I absolutely supplement everything with all of the funds we have? Yes. I have been working my brain, talking to the MBLC, talking to the accountant, saying, can I move this to this? Can I move money from state aid to the town to give it back to the library? No. Can I move it from state aid to the revolving account to give to the town, to give to the library? No. It's just not possible. I've worked it out. So the issue really is the certification. So can we make it work on a day-to-day basis? Yes. However, with the cut that you mentioned, it's disproportionate. I do want to mention that if it's disproportionate, we may not get certified. This is from the MBLC from this week. I spoke to them. The commissioners will try to do their best to look at the matter and the paperwork the town does submit because they want towns to be certified. That being said, if it's disproportionate, it is a lot more paperwork and the chances are lower. If you lose certification, it's not a one-year hit, it's an 18-month of being certified, which brings us to mid-FY28 or the beginning of FY29 to even consider getting certified, which means we've lost state aid in the amount of $17,000 just for next year, and then it goes up probably to about 18 the following year. So it's not a one-year hit, it is a 18-month.
Pam, if I...
Yeah.
Quick. So I believe you said earlier, or not,
Yeah.
the other night, that at 18.5% certification would not be an issue.
We still need to apply for a waiver, but it's not the disproportionate waiver. There's multiple levels of waivers they offer. So we still have to apply for a waiver, but because the town is in the financial situation it is, which would have the backup financials provided by the town to the MBLC, it would be more likely. The other part of that, though, is the state of Massachusetts has not solidified their language regarding the waivers yet. So the MBLC is still waiting to find out how many waivers are available to the MBLC this year. It's not an endless amount of waivers. If 50 towns need waivers, they're not going to come up with 50. There's a limited number of available, and we don't know that number yet. The MBLC doesn't know that number yet. So the risk is very great. If we had that information, it would be easier. But at the 18.25, we still have to apply for a waiver because we don't meet the minimum appropriation requirement, but it wouldn't be disproportionate.
Right.
And again, I think that the disproportionate, look, we're cutting a lot of other department budgets there. We
Yeah.
gotta look at it as an average.
Right.
Not just
Right.
as a whole number that says 18.5%.
Yeah.
Once we're all done with this exercise, we'll have a number. We'll say, okay, we've got 20 departments at this total, here's your average.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm certainly no authority on the library waiver, but given the town's financial situation, given the amount of cuts, I couldn't see a waiver being a problem, but, some bureaucrat will make that decision. I'm open to discussion at 18.25%, but I think that's where it's at. It's either there, it can't be any less than that. We're cutting DPW at 18.25%.
And I totally respect that. Obviously, I'm looking out for the library services of everybody in this town. It's not for me. It's not for the building.
No, I get it.
They lose services. They lose them everywhere. And we're stuck, but it's supposed to support libraries. So if we had a way around certification, but we don't. If anyone can find a way for me to move some money from state aid legally to the library budget, please tell me. I will do it. But I don't know how to do that. I don't think we can. I've looked at all the avenues. If someone knows how to do that, that'd be great.
So actually, I had something different on the table. But I'm going to go back to I thought your points were, which is better than mine, that you're looking to reduce it to 18.25%. Is that?
For discussion purpose, yes, see what the total number is. Caveat, that may very well have to be revisited, because we're spending money like we're out on shore leave here. Tonight, the number's going up, so for discussion purposes, I'm okay moving this to 18.25%, but it may have to be revisited.
Okay. So forgive me, library trustees and Pam, my position is do whatever we can do, need to do to get it below disproportionately reduced.
Yeah.
So that could be higher than
It could be.
18.25%.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice if we did on the fairness doctrine and the like, but I would say after the dust settles, we should make sure that we have taken them out of harm's way. Maybe a waiver is likely to be granted. I'd prefer not to take the risk that it's denied. So I want to make sure that at a minimum that we get below disproportionately reduced.
Fine.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and I am planning on using state aid for books, and if I have to supplement staff that way, use the trust fund for all of our maintenance. I may be getting a donation from somebody that will cover our CWMR's fee, so I am working everything I can, so I appreciate everything you're saying.
The problem with what I've said is you can't quantify it until we get to the end.
Yeah, we'll have to look at it at the end.
Right,
Right, so,
it is,
We're all on the
yeah.
same page with that, though. We don't wanna
okay.
see you have to go through that.
Any other questions?
Oh, of course.
Sandy?
Yeah, let's hand it away.
Hi, Sandy.
Is this thing on? It is? Okay. So, Mark, to your point about the waiver, so again, I just want everybody to have full transparency on, there are two types of waivers that Pam is talking about. The first, the bigger deal, if you will, is due to an unfair or disproportionate reduction. So that's like the big bad deal waiver. The other, like little brother waiver, if you will, is you're still not meeting the minimum requirements and you need to have a waiver in order for us to remain in good standing, essentially. So two different waivers. The thing that I did write down, Mark, and I'm going to quote you back to yourself just less than 20 minutes ago, which was, I'm not inclined to have one department take a bigger hit than another. So in all fairness, I think that trying to get us back to that 18 and change percentage is in the best interest of the library, obviously in the best interest of everyone who uses the library. So, it's my library, it's your library, it's everyone's library to use it and consume all of the information there as much as they possibly can, and allowing us to have greater funding available to keep the lights on, right? That's more people who have an opportunity to come into the building, on later hours, to bring their children there, and to really absorb everything that the library has available to offer them. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
So at your 18.25% cut,
Yeah.
you have
Let me go look at
cut in employee wages, 32,000 down from 42,742. Is that due to a reduction in hours that the library is going to be open? Or is that a reduction in?
it. will impact hours, yes. I would prefer.
Well, I mean, there's got to be a plan to impact hours if you're going to reduce salary, right?
Yep.
Okay. And that's a good percent, that's a 25%.
I have a call into the MBLC. I'll talk to them tomorrow, finding out how low can I get that book budget, but still spend it from somewhere else, don't ask me where yet, and then put it back in the hourly. So I have to find out if it's appropriated and expended. So I have that tomorrow, so that could help with that, because I do. That's 5 people, by the way. That 32,000 is for 5 people. That's not for one person, that's for 5
Understood.
people.
No.
So we need bodies in the building, I like to say, because,
Right, but I mean, if you're going to reduce your hours that you're going to be open, you're obviously going to reduce your hourly staff, hours
right,
worked.
right,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. And the other question is, the children's librarian salary does not reflect a reduction in hours. It stays the same.
It does not, because it was salaried, so we didn't touch it. It was unclear when we first started this process. We talked about wages, if we were reducing just hourly, or also able to reduce salaried people. That wasn't clear.
So just as a point of clarifying my quote, I am absolutely unmoved I am in favor of 18.25%, including for the library. my point was, if there is slippage, let's not let it slip beyond and get into disproportionately reduced, so.
That's fair.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm all set.
So I'm not sure what the motion is on the library, other than to hold it until we're all done to see where we land.
Funded, I would say, well, I'm making a lot of motions here, and I'll let somebody else do it, but I think we started 18.5. Let's see what this total number is, and we got to get there pretty quick because it's getting after the bewitching hour. But
motion.
put it at 18.5%.
Motion's made, second discussion? No.
18.25, I'm sorry, 18.25.
174.
Sorry.
Wait a second.
Motion's been made, seconded,
Discussion.
discussion.
So we're gonna move to move this back to 18.25
Yes.
instead of holding it till the end and seeing where we fall.
Well, we're going to move it back, but
Okay.
we're going to
Yep.
revisit it.
Understood.
It doesn't work.
Sure. Got it.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, abstentions, none. By my count, that leaves the police department.
And employee
which is-
benefits.
Am I right?
Well, you benefit.
Yeah, and employee
Oh,
benefits.
employee benefits, no, you're right. Stand corrected, thank you.
Is there anything we can even touch in here?
Employee benefits. Unemployment compensation was at 60, got cut to 50, then it got cut to 0. I'm not inclined to think 0 is a good number. I would think that somewhere along the line, somebody is going to file a claim for unemployment. And the overuse Tim quote, "We're going north," but I think we should at least have $10,000, maybe 12 in that particular account. In my estimation, somebody is going to collect. Could be wrong, but I don't think it's going to be at 0. And maybe my 10 to 12 is too high, but I think 0 is too low.
What has this historically been funded at in prior years?
Traditionally, usually funded at 0. Last year, we had an unemployment claim we didn't anticipate, and right now, I think it was like 15 or 16,000. So what happens sometimes too, and we don't always anticipate this, is if someone leaves here, they give their notice, they go to another job, but they're not there very long. When they file unemployment, it comes back to us, because we were the long-standing employer before that new one.
Quick question for you, Heather. We have a number of employees that are contracted. If an employee is contracted with a set end date to their contract, are they able to collect uninsurance?
Yes.
Unemployment?
Yes,
Okay.
it's no different than laying off the person.
So heading north as we may be, is there any appetite to add $10,000 to $12,000 to that number?
It sounds like it's probably prudent, Mark.
I'd say at 10.
I think it's prudent.
10.
10? Motion to add 10. Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Police Department. Which happens to be account 1012. Its reduction is 9.06. And there is, I think Jeremy pointed out a little earlier that the administrative wages are down appreciably. Heather, can you comment as to why? Because that looks a lot more than 18.25%.
Yes, so Eva is retiring at the end of June, and she will be staying on part-time. So that reflects her part-time wages, the hours she's able to work as a retiree.
And we're not going to backfill?
This is the wish of the police chief.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
I think that was one of those things where cuts have to come somewhere.
Okay, understood, yep. Okay,
Yeah.
as long as he's good with it.
And just a question again on this, I'm sorry, we don't have anybody from the police, I don't think here, but at 9.06, this is maintaining round-the-clock staffing, correct?
Correct.
Correct, okay.
Correct.
Make sure I have that right.
So, Heather, don't mean to put you on the spot, and I'm kind of rounding up, but about 30 minutes ago, it seemed to me that we were at about $149,000 worth of deficit. Am I right?
We're now at about 198,804.
Say again?
We're at that number.
Okay. So my position has been that I think we should have, and we did our best to make the cuts equitable across the table. There is not that kind of money other than the stabilization fund, which I think we need to be careful because we've taken out of it 2 years in a row, and we tried to add back to it. I would hate to go there. I'm going to stick with my position that I think there's money in the Anna Maria contract and budget that more should fall to the benefit of the town, because as we look at this right here, the police budget per this particular schedule is $1,181,000. Just unabridged and unconditional, just reading that number. But we have $761,000 that comes in from the Anna Maria agreement in the budget. So truthfully, this budget is $1,942,000. It's almost $2 million budget, way beyond, almost before we changed to the DPW budget, almost 3 times the size of the DPW budget. And I've maintained for a long time that budget is flawed and there's money to be had. And we're preparing this evening the FY26 budget. The time to prepare the Anna Maria Police Department FY26 budget is now. And I would submit to the select board, they should do it now. I believe the chief of police said he couldn't do it until he realized and determined what the override outcome was going to be. We've known what that has been now for 2 weeks. It says in the agreement that the town and the select board will prepare the budget. So I'm challenging the select board to go do that now and prepare that budget. And I think that there's a better way to prepare that budget so that more money would find its way to the town and not to individual employees. And I would submit to you that on our website, we have the Anna Maria contract, we have the special revenue funds. I'm requesting this evening that the FY25 Police Anna Maria budget be posted on the website for all the population, all the townspeople to see, and let them determine whether or not they think that more money can or should come to the town. That's the only way I see of us balancing this particular budget. There's no other revenue sources, and we've added to the budget as we've gone through budget by budget to some small extent, line by line. We don't have $198,000 of additional cuts. It's got to come from the police department.
So
That's my position.
So basically, I just want to make sure I get this clear so that we're all on the same page. We're going to bill for services, but not provide the services.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Well, hold on, no, let me finish, because.
Let me finish, because I didn't even come.
You're interrupting me, but that's all right.
Saying that.
One at a time.
I didn't come within a mile of saying that. I'm not saying that whatsoever, so don't say that I said that. So now if you'd like to continue.
No, thank you.
So,
I think that the bottom line here is, and we've spent a lot of time going through this, and, you know, we're back to where we started. And I just, Mark, I can understand your passion about the Anna Maria contract. I just don't think that's going to be resolved in time for this budget cycle.
why not? We're doing the FY26 budget for the town. Why not do the FY26 budget for the Anna Maria contract? Why not? Why can't it be resolved?
Because we're in the middle of a contract with them, so I think it's a larger...
No, the contract runs until June 30th, 26.
Yep.
It's an agreement, leave it alone. The clause in the agreement says annually you prepare a budget. I'm not saying tamper with the agreement, it's a good agreement, but it says you prepare a budget annually. I'm saying call to action, prepare the budget right now. I see no reason why you can't do that, none. And if there's any delay, then that's telling me something right there. We're not delaying it. There's no reason that it should be delayed. None.
But we are running out of time to set this budget.
All the more reason to press to do it quickly. There's no reason to delay it. When are you going to do it? It starts July 1st, so when are you going to do it? In the fall?
No.
Do it right now. So if you have to have it in place by July 1st, why not have it in place by June 15th? There's no reason why it shouldn't be done, and there's money to be found. That's a terrible budget. Terrible budget. We have department heads that they're cutting their hours, and by extension, they're cutting their pay. And we have police officers that are making $208,000 and $210,000. That's inexcusable. That's got to be fixed. And all the townspeople and all the department heads and all the people that have taken cuts should be outraged to allow that to happen. And this one department has been reduced by 9%. I'm not coming off that position, so.
So that's, go ahead.
No, that's all right. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, so, I mean, at that point, fine, that's your position. Where do we go from here? We still don't have a balanced budget?
I'm telling you about to prepare an Anna Maria contract.
Well, you're telling them
And
that.
see what can come out of that contract to maybe subsidize this police budget right here. I'm saying at least 100,000 there, maybe 150, possibly 200,000, and we got a balanced budget. That's what I'm saying. So,
I don't,
I think it's for the select board to take up, right? I mean, we can do that. It's a
you're right,
suggestion,
it
but-
says in the agreement that the select board does it, not the finance committee. I think it makes mention of the town administrator, but I'm just saying the charge to the select board is go do it, or come back to us and tell us why you can't, why you didn't, and why you can't change, and why those particular salaries are at the level that they are. You tell us that that's the way it has to be.
All right. We bill for services. Let's assume, because of your disappointment, anger, whatever you want to call it, at the police chief's salary, that we reduce what the chief gets paid. Why would Anna Maria then not expect that budget to be reduced? Why would Anna Maria say, that's okay, you're going to cut how much we pay the chief to handle our department, but you guys can keep the money? Why would Anna Maria not say, well, if you're going to cut how much we're compensating, because it is billed to Anna Maria, it's not coming from the taxpayers. If we're going to cut that, then why would Anna Maria then say, please, keep the change?
Because I'm going to tell you, Peter, that Anna Maria does not know that that amount of money is going to the chief of police and the lieutenant. I'm telling you, point blank, they do not know, number one. And number two, $60,000, we pay him $137,000. and over 60,000 comes to him from Anna Maria. So if I do the simple math, that's essentially 1/3 of his total compensation, which has been in the T&G, so it's a public record.
It's a public record.
One-third of his salary goes to Anna Maria. If our police chief is spending 1/3 of his time at Anna Maria, that's a terrible budget. Keeping in mind that they're out of session for 5.5 months out of the year. They're only in session for 7 months. That's good money if you can get to work. And I'm saying it needs to be looked at. I've argued that one single point for 3 months. It needs to be looked at.
Fine, we can look at anything you want. You've got the FY25 budget, so you have looked at it. Here's the part that I don't understand. You think that we're just going to take that money. It's money that we bill Anna Maria. And yes, I'm sorry, but I don't think, and I could be wrong, and I will find out for you. But I have a hard time believing that Anna Maria is writing a check for $761,000 and not knowing where the money's going.
I'm telling you.
Now, if they're that ignorant.
No, I didn't say that.
Well,
say that.
but nobody's going to pay $761,000 to a town and not know where the money is, number one. And number two, it is part of the contract that the chief, the lieutenant, the administrative assistant, and the sergeant also get compensated.
It's not in the agreement. That is not spelled out in the agreement. And I'll be happy to put it up on the board. It's not. The budget may spell that out. And if you're saying we bill for services, you mean to tell me that 1/3 of the police chief's time is dedicated to one entity in this town, one college? I don't think that they're that problem of a corporate entity or corporate citizen that requires that amount of time.
How much does a police chief typically get paid at a college, Mark?
So are you telling me?
I'm just asking a question.
I don't know.
I mean, you must have an answer if
No, I
you
don't
know
know.
that our chief, who has taken on the role of chief of the police department at Anna Maria as well because of a contract that we've entered into, if you're saying that he is overpaid, then you must have an idea of what chiefs get paid.
So what I'm going to say is I'm not the attorney here, but you just said if he's the chief of police of the town of Paxton and the chief of police of Anna Maria College, that's a conflict of interest.
No, it isn't. We've entered a contract. The town is in
I'm
contract.
telling you, it's not allowed to happen.
Hold it. I think we need to be very careful about alleging conflicts of interests.
I'm not alleging conflict of interest. He's saying that he's the chief of police in both places. As a town person, I get a lot of problem with that.
Well, but the town is in contract with the college.
But it's to provide services, it's not to provide another police chief. So let's post, I'll tell you what, let me ask this, let's at least do this. Post the FY25 Anna Maria contract right now, so all the townspeople can see it. Would you agree to do that?
I don't have it with me.
The
But
contract is, I think Mark's referencing the budget.
The budget.
The budget. Would you agree? Would you allow that to be posted on the website?
I would have to talk to the board. I mean, I haven't seen the FY25 budget
The
myself.
board's right here, let's ask them right now.
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're gonna do it?
Put it up there if you want.
Perfect. Super.
That's great, but,
That's
wait,
Where's he getting with his budget and the deficit?
yeah, that's the question, thank you.
Can I make like 3 points real quick? One, I brought this up before, it's so hard, it's really hard to have to keep dancing around this. It's like, we can rip into every other department, but every time this comes up, it gets very emotional, and I get that.
Well, it's a little disappointing, especially tonight when,
Well, I know.
you know, we had the DPW suit.
Because I think, and I brought this point up before, is part of it is the semantics of a no vote, right? Like this all gets out there and everything else is, like, it just feels really hard to explain. I think we're just getting to the point, like, my question would be, no, I don't know exactly what a police chief should make, but as a taxpayer, what I would say to you guys, if Anna Maria didn't exist, you guys set that or you negotiated, what would you say? You would pay, if Anna Maria didn't exist and someone's doing a full-time job as a police chief in Paxton, it feels to me like it would be around 137 or around 140 because Holden's like 150.
Which is where he is.
Right, and that's where I think people get frustrated because if you're getting that salary for that job, then you're saying you're doing another job on the other side. How can you be dedicating the time to that job? And it might be you're doing 90 hours a week. I don't know. Maybe that is. But then on the same note, as we're 2 people short and there's shifts to be filled, what I hear is he's not going to fill a shift, right?
Oh, he's filled many shifts.
I know, but he just
So
said the
so
other
let's
when
do
this-
the.
But wait, hold on.
No, hold on, Tony.
Hold on, Peter, let
This
him
came up
finish.
the other day, we brought that up, and so the only thing I have to go on is he said he won't fill that shift. And I go on the website, and I'm here tonight, but I'm also a taxpayer and a voter. I have the same question. I tried to bring that up the other night, I just can't seem to get answers, there's 21 people listed. I know we have 7 patrol officers, and there may be good answers to this, but we have a couple of shifts that would not have 24/7 coverage. There's a chief, there's a lieutenant, there's sergeants, there's detectives. Is there literally no way we can fill it? I mean, I look at all the stuff Travis is doing to make it work in his department. I get it that it's a different animal, and maybe there's good answers for it, but we're already at this point in the process and we're not getting them. Like, why can't those shifts be filled by some of the, and there may be very good reasons, but give them to me point by point. Why can't they be filled by people that exist right now?
But I think that's what the chief was saying, is that those number of police officers up at Anna Maria are contracted to be there.
Yeah, but not the Anna Maria guys. What about detectives? What about everybody else that's on, and there may be a good explanation, but again, I don't work in that field, but why can't those shifts be covered by people? So I brought up, he just said that everyone's cross-trained. I walked away from that thinking that meant that we weren't going to get to this point, that we had people who could do this, And I'm hoping that's a valid question. I'm not understanding whether all the people I see on the...
So we need to do this in order to be fair. We've had Travis here. We've had Mike up here.
Right.
We've had the librarian up here. We've had someone from conservation up here. Meanwhile, we're doing a pretty good number on our chief without him at least being able to explain himself.
Well, no, I did ask him that question, was here the other day, and that was the answer was...
But we've had,
cross-trained.
right, but we've had, I mean, Travis has been up here a couple of times, the library's been up here a couple of times. Mark came up here once, he's gonna have a chance to watch this, he's gonna have a chance to understand the questions that are being asked. I think it's only fair that rather than talk about him when he's not here, that as we did with the others.
Nobody's talking about it. This is exactly the problem. Every other department, we can talk about the department. As soon as we go anywhere here, you get pigeonholed as anti-this.
And I mean, the chief has said this, he's called this a witch hunt numerous times. He's called this a conspiracy theory. The transparency needs to be there.
It does. And again, when I asked the question the other day, the answer was everybody's cross-trained. So I did ask the question, he did answer it. I walked away thinking, oh, you've got 21 people listed on, okay, take the public safety guys out. I just asked it here again. There maybe is a good answer to explain to me what a detective does, why they can't fill shifts. What does the lieutenant do? What does the chief do? You just told me he fills shifts, so why not these? I know it's frustrating. I know it's not ideal.
And it's hard because I don't run the police department. So I'm doing the best I can here, Tony. I know that he fills shifts when people call out, when people aren't available. There are times when, rather than not having somebody here on a Saturday, he'll work on a Saturday, as well as obviously his regular hours. That being said, I still would prefer that the chief have an opportunity.
Oh, no, I agree. Yeah.
To speak on for himself, and I know what he has said. I understand his past, but nonetheless, we've had the other department heads here.
It is fair, and just one thing to add to that, though.
Yeah, of course.
Again, I've seen great numbers from Mike. I've seen, I can understand everything else. When we talk about the 24/7 coverage and shifts not being covered, I tried to ask that question again the other night. I don't feel like you got a straight answer. I understand mutual aid. Look, I'm not trying to compare notes, but I did spend 7 years of my life as a paramedic. I've worked in EMS. I understand how it works to an extent, And I still don't understand the gaps when we say there's no numbers. I'm a numbers person. It should be pretty easy to say on these shifts. I haven't seen any numbers that say on these shifts we get this number of calls. I mean, we already rely on mutual aid in some cases. We keep saying mutual aid might be there, it might not be there. Mm-hmm. In my experience, it was never quite that uncertain, right? We already rely on mutual aid, so maybe the numbers are terrible. Maybe the response time is 2 minutes when we don't rely on mutual aid and 40 minutes when we do. But why can't we see those numbers? Or has anybody done that? Has anybody said, put a number to it? I just don't want to make, this is a huge decision that impacts a ton of departments and a ton of people in town. Like, it's not that much to ask to actually not make it an emotional decision, to just say, hey, I don't know what's going to happen.
You're right.
Spend some time and put the numbers together. Not you, Peter. I'm just saying, that's frustrating.
That's quite all right.
Peter, I got to clarify a point you made in terms
Yes,
of
sir.
the chief not being here.
Yes, sir.
The library director is here, the DPW director is here, the fire chief is here, conservation board members here. I don't want to exclude anybody. Library trustees are here. Not one of them was invited. They all came voluntarily. It was posted, they saw it. So anybody not being here is not because they were excluded or not invited, because nobody was invited. It's a public meeting, and there was no surprise or no secret of what we were going to be talking about. So I don't like the implication that we were talking about somebody when they were not here.
If I may,
When they
Mark,
certainly
I just-
Just don't give away
welcome
the person.
to join us.
Yeah, the police chief has an illness in his family, and that he's attending to tonight.
I'm not accusing him of not being here. I'm clarifying another point, that the
Kind of
fact
did sound
that,
like
Yeah.
you were.
the fact that we talked about it doesn't mean that we didn't extend an invitation to him. In his personal matters, I feel badly about that, to hear about that. But I don't want it to look like that he wasn't here, so therefore we brought this up for discussion.
No. That's not what I said. That's not what I said, Mark. And you're quick to correct me, which is fine. But all I was saying was that we're attacking his personal salary, and the gentleman isn't here to defend himself. He couldn't be here this evening. He would have if he could have. I've spoken to him as other people. I'm just going to leave it at that.
So I'm going back to the point that the agreement says that there's an FY26 budget that the town or the select board prepares. It's a single sheet. It's got about 18 to 20 line items. Any one of you have the skill and the talent to do the budget in 24 hours. So I think it should have the chief's input or the lieutenant's input in their personal matters notwithstanding. I'm suggesting that it be moved as quickly as it possibly can and be brought back to this particular committee.
I think we've got a meeting scheduled for Monday, right? Do we have one for Monday?
We don't currently have it on the books. We can do it on Monday. Our usual is the 9th. The board can meet on Monday. I'm not available
The
Monday.
9th is getting late,
Oh, we're getting a little too close, aren't we?
and we can't, what's that?
Sorry, we're getting a little too close.
Yeah, and we can't do it tomorrow, obviously, because it's not on the agenda. You can't-
Well, we have a meeting, but I don't know what.
We have a joint meeting to discuss that, but not to discuss Anna Maria.
You can amend the agenda. We can amend the agenda right now. As soon as you have notice of it, we can.
If you haven't got any information, how can we discuss it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Carol, I can't hear you.
What she's saying is that we just have to get a hold of Mark as well so that he could attend, so that he could be part of this.
I
He
think-
would need to be part of it.
I think the only concern, Mark, with even if the town's able to put together the budget, is it still has to be accepted by Anna Maria. And I believe there's a transition going on with the head of Anna Maria, so I don't know. And I think that's probably one of the reservations Mark had with putting a budget for it at this time for AMC. He wasn't sure who was going to approve it or where it was going to go. That being said, I think he could probably draft something, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be accepted by AMC.
A draft is better than a blank sheet of paper. So
So I'm reading the contract, and I just want
You want to talk to that gentleman?
Yeah. So JJ Shea, 50 Pleasant Street. So I'm looking at the Anna Maria contract on the website. Section 3, Section B, a little bit further down, it says, the budget will generally run for a period from July 1st to June 30th of each year. In January of each year, during the term of this agreement, the town shall provide to Anna Maria a proposed budget relative to the costs incurred by the town for the additional public safety services as identified in section 1 and 2 hereof for the upcoming fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th, which budget shall be subject to the review of Anna Maria and the review by the town of Paxton administrator. And there's more, but it sounds like the budget was to be decided in January, according to that verbiage. I don't know if there's any other, but I'm just reading the contract. So.
JJ, I know you weren't here for some of the prior meetings, but the chief had already stated that he was unable to formulate a budget yet because of not having all the information about, whether the override would pass and what, the town's financial situation would look like.
Just wanted it to be said. Thank you.
So going back to where the Finance Committee is on the budget, it seems to me that, first of all, we have a meeting scheduled, publicly posted for tomorrow night. But it would appear that there needs to be some movement or not on the Anna Maria budget. So is there value for us to meet tomorrow night, or do we postpone and meet on Wednesday, June 4th?
I'm not comfortable waiting that long. I mean, we've spent now 2 nights here and we've basically got nowhere.
I'm not sure we got nowhere.
Well, we've gone in reverse. How can you say that?
We're one cost center off from having a number that we need to meet.
One cost center?
42 of them died.
Right, I would not say we've gotten nowhere, Jeff. That's not true at all.
I mean, so that's assuming that all of that 200,000 would come out of that cost center?
No,
That assumption?
no, but I wouldn't say we haven't gotten anywhere.
Well,
We don't have a budget, but that's different than we haven't accomplished anything. We went through 43 cost centers. We went through 20 of them rather intimately, so I think we accomplished a lot. We don't have a balanced budget, but that's separate and apart from the comment that you made.
I guess, but, it's like an airplane that doesn't take off from the ground. You're not going to get to your final destination. So I propose we meet tomorrow night, and frankly, I would suggest we post again for Friday night and Saturday night until we get this addressed.
And I'm okay with that. Like, I want to be clear, and Peter, I didn't mean to get heated. I've always got along with you very well, but I wasn't planning on talking about that. But for me, it's like I'm just not. I want to make a decision, and I'm okay with any way it goes. But I just want to get the answers to make the decision, right? I just feel like those are fair questions. If there's I know exactly how many people Travis has. I know how many people Mike has, and I know what they can do. I don't feel like we have those answers. I mean, I have no problem if somebody comes back, whether it be the chief or anyone, and just says, yeah, you're an idiot, a detective can't cover that shift, or I literally don't know, or the same thing with the mutual aid. I live in town. If you tell me that you're going from a 5-minute response on a domestic violence, which I've had very close to me in some pretty bad situations that I've had to call, if you tell me I'm going from a 5-minute response to a 45-minute response, end the conversation for me. I just don't know those numbers. And I think it's fair. And not just me, the people that are going to go out and vote at the end of the day, if we don't give them those answers when we get to the town meeting, it's going to be a no again, because they just don't feel like they have answers to the questions either if we're doing the best we can.
But Tony, I also think that's an unknown, you're using 5 minutes versus 45. I think that 45 is an unknown.
No, you can absolutely get that number.
55.
Yeah, but you can absolutely get that number based on, because we use mutual aid now, right? So we should know what the response times are when we've had to incorporate mutual aid, right?
I think it's
It's
probably.
going to depend on whether the mutual aid town is tied up, right? So it
Well, right,
works
but
just
that's-
like EMS in that regard, right? It
But I
depends
think
on
that's
who's
the exact
available.
point, right? Because you could narrow it down to the shifts that would not be covered. You could, if we had to use mutual aid on those shifts and what, I mean, it's not
Here's the
perfect.
key difference, though, between, and I know, having worked as a paramedic for 7 years, you're familiar with mutual aid.
Right.
So mutual aid for a police department actually works slightly different than mutual aid for EMS.
Right.
Mutual aid for a police department depends on that shift actually being filled, and then you will get mutual aid. But police departments don't provide mutual aid to other communities because the shifts are unfilled, if that makes sense.
Right, so that's a good distinction, right? So if the shifts, and when we say the shift's unfilled, and that's, again, I kind of brought that up the other day and get a good answer to it, is if when we say unfilled, that means there's nobody in this building, right?
That means there's nobody either in this building or patrolling the streets,
Okay.
correct?
But if they're at Anna Maria,
That's mutual aid.
okay, so if so,
But
if
the
I,
understanding was that 2 people had to be in Anna Maria.
Just make sure you're using a microphone.
well, that's exactly my question. If in the hypothetical, if there's 2 people at Anna Maria and they're not on a call or anything, they can respond to that call, right?
It depends
Or
on
can
if-
they not?
If they're at Anna Maria, it will depend, of course, if they're tied up with something already at Anna Maria.
Right. Okay. Well, obviously,
So here's, I mean, and again, you're asking me to answer how to run a police department.
I'm literally
and I don't
just
pretend.
looking in that direction.
But I look at it, no, I understand that, but I look at it as, I think, to Mark's point, if it's middle of July, it's probably not an issue.
Right.
If it's a Thursday night on a college campus with college in session,
Right.
could be a very different story. I think, so I think that there are some questions that perhaps should be answered.
Yeah.
I still have trouble I still have trouble believing that with an itemized budget going to Anna Maria College, that the college is not aware of the compensation that's being paid. When I just looked at it, and it's literally spelled out line by line.
Yeah,
I understand we're talking about 2 different things here. I get that.
Right.
But they're all related to, I'd like to get the chief in the room and speak with him.
Oh, no, and I agree, and I think we've got to try our best to keep it from getting emotional, because it's like factual answers. Like, again, like, I totally get that there's, maybe, it's not a one-to-one with mutual aid, but what we keep hearing is like, I mean, it might work, it might not work.
So
I don't
even,
think it's that.
but even the mutual aid, and I understand what you say, if somebody picks up and calls 911, but how many things get prevented because our guys are out on the streets? Because they see the
100%,
cruisers?
yeah, that's obviously the ideal.
You know,
Right,
and it's,
right.
That's the idea.
And it's, so it's,
yeah, and,
I've never been streets,
and, you know, all this talk about, you know, I know it sounds like nuancing when we talk about having 24/7 coverage. I can tell you at about, I think it was around 11 o'clock at night on November 14th, 2009, I was out of town, and my brother doesn't live here. I was halfway across the Pacific. I'm very glad we had round-the-clock coverage. It didn't work out for my father, but they did everything they could to restart him on the den floor. And I'm very lucky that Sergeant Lang was the first one there. So this stuff matters. I know people say, oh, it's not a big deal. Mutual aid, they can come. Seconds matter. It was too late for him, but this stuff, it matters. And I'm not saying that there may not be an opportunity, Mark, to get involved in this contract, but if it's you some night, I don't want that ambulance coming from Leicester. I know where you live. You're on the Rutland, and so am I. It's not acceptable. So we got to figure this out. We got to figure this out. Now, while we're at it, Heather, I'd like to know the procedural method here. If this town can't balance its budget by the fiscal year, what happens? I think I know some of this answer. but I
So
want to hear it.
oddly enough, I had a colleague who actually reached out to DOR to see what happens if a municipality does not have a balanced budget by June 30th. And I love the words because the answer back was municipal Armageddon.
State
right?
receiver?
No, municipal Armageddon, because the concept is if you do not have an approved budget by June 30th, so town meeting doesn't approve a budget, it's not balanced, you cease to operate, right? So there's no police, there's no fire, there's no one paying bills, there's no one answering phones. It's all down to volunteers with paper and pencil in a parking lot because you can't get into anything, you can't charge any bills. So
Right.
it would be in the town's best interest if we could have a balanced budget prior to June 30th.
Yes, it would be.
That's the goal. Was there anybody else from the public that wanted to speak? No? No, I'm sorry, Bob?
I
Microphone?
Bob, we need a microphone.
Bob Ferguson, 38 Brigham Road. I just want to express my dismay that what it sounds like is that the police chief and the lieutenant are getting like a huge extra bonus that should be like part of the general budget, as Mr. Love said. I just think I just want to make my opinion heard as a resident that I think you have a very good point.
Thank you.
Mr. Love, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Heather, if we don't have an approved budget, what happens with free cash?
So if we do not utilize we don't lose it. If we don't utilize the free cash before June 30th, we don't have access to it until it gets recertified.
I knew that answer, I just wanted to make sure it got said. So that's really important, obviously. So we roll into free cash for the following year.
So we got the overlay, we lost the overlay, remember? The 1 year we went to a 1/12 budget because we didn't have a balanced budget. We'd utilised 100,000 for overlay, and we didn't have a town meeting that approved the budget, so we didn't use the overlay, so it had to roll over, and we wasn't able to have access to it. Do you remember that?
No, for some reason I
And then the
don't,
following year,
but-
we had 100,000 extra in free cash, and I made it plain that 100,000 was because
We were dealing with much smaller numbers in.
So Heather, could we ask with all the iterations that we went through and recalibration and so on, could you send us that document with those changes either this evening or tomorrow?
Yeah, so it's already in Jeff's inbox and it's already on the website.
Okay, and we'll meet tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. I'm sorry to say we need to do that, but I think it's advisable that we do that. So any further public comment? Anything further from the select board?
So I do have a point. So we're meeting tomorrow. Is the select board meeting tomorrow?
We do have a posted meeting for tomorrow.
Yeah. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Tim, you'll be with us tomorrow night?
I am.
Yep. Jeff, Tony, Jeremy?
Yeah.
I'm going to have a very hard time making it.
Yep, okay.
Well, I mean, by 7,
Yep.
I'll let you.
So motion to adjourn's been made, second, any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none, abstained?
I oppose. I oppose the adjournment.
You oppose that we adjourn?
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like it's 4-1 that we adjourn, we stand adjourned.
May I have a motion? Okay,
Thanks for coming.
stay and continue. That works too.
Tell Neil we said hi up there.
I mean, it's,
Julia?
I don't know what realistically we can do right now. I just think that what we did tonight is moved backwards. We essentially took everything and added back into the budget to get to one place. So I feel like we had progress yesterday and today it's gone, so.
So don't we have, if we haven't, because we're still in session, don't we have a 1/12 budget to go by?
It's only during COVID that they permitted that. 1/12 is strictly reserved for the schools.
So what do we do then? We just don't spend anything?
No, literally, we don't exist on July 1. There's no functional service.
So it's kind of like a federal government shutdown. It's that same
Yeah,
idea.
pretty much.
State government.
Well, the feds have done it a number of times.
Pretty much.
Yeah, just everything stops.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
No.
It's not just that, it's that we're going to have less revenue when we start up again, because we won't have the free cash.
No, we have to get this done, obviously. Can't imagine the FY '26.
I'm sorry.
I can't imagine the FY '26 numbers for me and Maria are going to change all that much. I don't know where that 200, what's our deficit now? 198, right? 200, right?
Yeah. The question that I'm going to have for Mark, for the police chief, is, you know, when he does the budget for Anna Maria, is there an expectation on Anna Maria's side that it be continuous with what it was before? And the very real concern that I have is that if that starts to change, and with some of the comments that have been made, that Anna Maria is going to look at this and say, we're pulling out. We have a new president. Is this in the college's best interest at this point to be roped into, you know, public scrutiny over whether or not the situation is ethical? That's my very real fear here, is that we're taking this way too far, and it's going to cause us to lose the contract entirely.
I think that's certainly a possibility, especially with a change in regime, yeah. I think that's, but I don't know. I mean, we're trying to answer questions that we can't answer.
Right.
It's, up until this year, it's been a solid relationship between the two.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have to think about, if that was to happen, we still have to serve up there.
Correct.
Correct.
Regardless.
Well, so going back to when we first did this, because I was on the original board that signed the contract, which is why I was thinking that the amount of money that was paid to them was in the contract, because it was in the original contract. And then we had to change it, and I'd forgotten about that. So I apologize. That's on me. That's going back to 15 years ago instead of the most recent. But what was happening was they added some things at Anna Maria that caused them to have more incidents on campus that their campus security could not handle. So what was happening was our police department was responding fairly regularly to Anna Maria, and really pulling away resources from the rest of the town.
I'm being dangerous because they didn't have the resources.
Oh, yeah, it's, and I don't want to go into too much detail as to why, because...
Well, also too, like the comment that was made about 7 months out of the year with speaking with Mark, it is a 12-month.
It is. It is.
Lessons, of
It's
course.
definitely, it was definitely worse in the fall and the spring semesters, no question about that. But anyway, so what was happening was Paxton police resources were getting called there so often that the Anna Maria College president reached out and like, is there something else we can do so that we have people that are going to be stationed here?
Right.
And that's when Bob DeRozier and I forget the person's name. It wasn't the president. It was.
Starts with C.
What's that?
Starts with C.
Yeah, but I can't think of it. It's too long ago. They sat down and came up with this. And it was such a unique agreement that Bob DeRozier actually went to a police conference in Chicago and was asked to speak about the agreement, because it was the first one like it between any community and any college in the country, of which I'm aware. And it's been in place ever since. And what's nice is it's two agencies being directed by one chief and one lieutenant.
And I know Mark has spoken many times about how many police officers need to be in Anna Maria, what it's budgeted. So I think that he's talked about that in length.
Yeah, so that's one of the questions I have, because what I remember hearing from him was that there's an expectation from the college in terms of how many officers there are, the chief situation, et cetera. I don't know the specifics of that, and I don't know where, if anywhere, it's memorialized.
And I want to make it clear, I'm not advocating for the police budget or the fire budget. What I'm trying to do is, and this is one of the things that I talked to Heather about this afternoon, what we're trying to do is take our limited resources. And so I was told by someone last night that I only represent public safety, and that I really need to represent all of the budgets. I don't represent any of the budgets. I represent 5,004. Thank you, Heather, for reminding me that there was 4 other people over 5,000. 5,004.
Want to leave anyone out?
Thank you. There's 5,004 residents in this town that I represent.
Absolutely.
And as I stated the other night, something, God forbid, ever happened to one of them because of a vote that I took, I would have trouble with that. So it's not that I'm advocating for the police, I'm advocating to have the proper coverage so that our townspeople are going to be kept safe. I want to make that clear, and yeah, I do get emotional about it because, you know, the fire department, the EMS has been there for both my parents. I've had a police officer have come to my house when my brother passed and sit down with my mother and have to break that news to her. You know, Bob Mortel, I grew up with. Bob Mortel is not a name in history for me. He's someone with whom I grew up. He's a little bit older than me. I want to make that clear. But, you know, we served on the fire department together. I played hockey with his brother. He was a real person. So these things, I do get emotional about it because when somebody says I'm going to put on a bulletproof vest and put myself in a line of danger so you don't have to, yeah, I have a lot of respect for that. And when I have someone who may not be showing the kind of respect I wish they would, I do get emotional, and I apologize for that. We all know that Mark is going through something. We'll talk to him. Maybe you can talk to him so that I don't get a little too fired up. And we can see if we can't clear some of this up. But I looked at that FY25 budget. Carol just showed it to me. I do have it apparently, but it's laid out line by line. To say that Anna Maria doesn't know where that money's going, I don't know. It just, I have a feeling. I mean, if we want to, if Anna Maria wishes to cut the chief's salary, the lieutenant's salary, and those salaries, I don't think they're going to expect then the town to just pocket the money. That's just my feeling.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I have a crazy question.
Go ahead.
Do you think it's worthwhile to invite Anna Maria to attend a meeting?
No. Might pull out.
I don't know if, I don't like to play a game if I don't know the players.
Well, I don't think anybody here is trying to play a game.
No, I think the concern is we don't know necessarily, I don't know the inner politics of whatever's going on with AMC, right? There's a transition in leadership, there's other pieces. I don't know how much they're aware of this, or how many of these meetings they watch, or how many folks who work there are residents who are staying in tune. I don't know if I'd be comfortable bringing someone in and them not knowing all of these pieces and then putting them on the spot. We don't know how that's going to go. To Peter's point, you know, they could say, thanks, it's been real peace.
Well, to Peter's point, I think if it's spelled out the way it's spelled out online, they know where these funds are going.
Oh, but we have to, I mean, it is an itemized budget. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
Yeah. I just think it sounds like a lot of this could be addressed or answered directly from Anna Maria. Again, I don't disagree with Heather that that's putting them on the spot. Absolutely.
And there's a
But-
risk there. There's no question there's a risk there. I don't know the answer.
We can pass a budget at town meeting. Even if it was there, even on the floor, you could say,
But I don't.
You've got to pass a budget, really. So whatever it is, you can come back again, but you've got to be operational by 1st of July.
Right.
So you don't have to be, you can come back for a special town meeting afterwards and change things around.
And I think that's part of what we were trying to work toward originally, right? We were trying to just get to a place where we're balanced and then say, okay, we've got something we can present on June 16th. Now we can have all these other discussions, right?
Yeah.
But we have to get to a balanced budget to start with.
I agree.
And I think we've gotten waylaid sort of repeatedly by a lot of other discussions coming into play that we don't have time for right now.
I agree with that as well. I mean, there's some things that we should be looking at, but if they don't pertain to the FY26 budget revenues, We don't need to talk about them now.
Yeah.
We've got plenty of time next year. We need to talk about how we get to a balanced budget and how we become functional on 1st of July.
Yeah.
We can do that.
So trying to completely
Can't wait.
rework a contract that we are in the middle of right now, I have to agree with, Mr. Wenzel's sentiments that trying to do that in the limited amount of time that we have is going to be difficult, if not impossible. I mean, you're asking, to Peter's point, you're asking for the college to change how they're compensating people so that we can do what with that money? I guess that's the part I'm really not clear on, right?
That's what Peter's trying to say.
what I'm trying to say is it's not a for-profit contract.
Yeah.
They once said they don't pay taxes for a reason, so why should they?
Yeah, because when I first got on board, we had a selectman who was very active. And there were a number of times when we asked Anna Maria College for pilot, payment in lieu of taxes, which is, when you look at what's going on Grove Street in Worcester with the WPI basically taking over that whole area. The reason they can take over that whole area is because they do pay Worcester, the city of Worcester pilot. They have that kind of money. I can remember having breakfast, I don't remember if you were there or not, Carol, when you were town administrator, but with the chairman of the school committee at the time. Gosh, I'm terrible with names, I can't think of his name now. Nice guy. Miles, what not?
Nearly, I think. Mills.
Mills, that's what it was.
Yes, I was there.
Great guy, Ken Mills, great guy.
I was there, yeah.
And when we were talking about the fact that Anna Maria College doesn't pay pilot, which they can't. I mean, let's face it, they don't have the endowment that we're hearing Harvard has.
Right.
He was saying, boy, that's just strange because it's costing us, at the time, it was costing the town about $350,000 in tax revenue. That's what we estimated it at. It's obviously much higher than that now. Ken Mills goes, geez, at Holy Cross, we would just write a check. Well, yes, you would. At Holy Cross, that's what you would do.
Yeah.
Anna Maria, it doesn't happen that way.
Slightly different situation.
So I would think that if there was going to be a reduction in the budget, I would think that they would expect to see savings from that reduction, especially if any of the rumors are true that Anna Maria's finances are not great, that their enrollment is down. I don't know. I suppose we can try, but
To Heather's earlier point, we can try, but it also requires that Anna Maria accept that.
that's true too.
And I don't know how long it's going to take us to get them to accept that change.
I think we need to work with what we have. I think we need to work with the information we've got at the moment.
I would agree with that statement. What do you think, Heather? I'd like to hear your input.
So I think it's going to be very hard to get the AMC information before tomorrow. I think even if Mark were able to put a draft of the information together, which he has a skeleton, so I'm sure he already has a working, updated version, just waiting to see if he has to shift anything around. He has that, but it's not going to, the proposal as presented is not going to change the burden on the town and shift any cost over there. They already pick up quite a substantial amount of costs anytime they're related to officers here that are also on that budget. So I don't think there's any more shifting that can be done. I don't think it's going to make a difference. I think, the point's well received, and, this is the last year for the AMC contract. It's a good opportunity to relook at things negotiating for the following year. As far as balancing the budget, Peter, you and I had a conversation earlier.
We did.
I have ideas that get us, as of earlier, I think I'm within 17,000 of balance and achieving most of the goals, and you could always shift one thing and you would be there.
Now, I thought you had shared that with finance. You did not?
I did not share that with finance.
Okay.
Not physically. I had mentioned it to Mark that I had some ideas, but I didn't physically send.
Okay, all right, but you did mention to him that you had some ideas.
Yes,
anyway.
yes. I did send it to him about 15 minutes ago. So he does now have it when he gets home, when he looks at the email at 11 o'clock at night. It's only 10, but
Did you send that to me too?
I could, as long as you, well, let's wait a second, because I haven't even sent it to 4 other members of the select board.
Which I would ask you to do.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I can do that. Keep in mind that what it is it's a proposal to get to a balanced budget. It applies some theories across the board. It will likely make people unhappy across the board. Would you say that's about accurate, Peter?
It's
It's not gonna be necessarily well received by all, and the departments don't know about the proposals for the most part.
And I don't think unhappiness is an emotion that'll be a new introduction.
Oh, good.
I think there's plenty of unhappiness already across the board. I agree.
But it's close to balance.
It's going
and
to
you could
upset some people.
You could apply some theories from tonight to it, and then you'd be at balance. You would have, you would restore, to a certain extent, your finance positions. You'd have at least one of the fire EMT positions. You'd have at least half the year police. You could always shift the second fire position to police. I had initially proposed it on the fire side. And you would have reductions in certain levels of staffing across all departments. Would you say that's an accurate?
That's what you went over this afternoon, yeah.
Yeah. So, I can't send it right now, my battery's dead. Sorry. It's what? 10:06. Battery only lasts for about 3 hours.
Because at this point, we've taken the two proposals we have, the 18 and 2500% across the board, and your proposal, and we've basically gone off the path with both of them.
We went completely opposite.
Yeah, so right now, we're $198,000 in the hole, and I agree with Heather, just like you guys have been saying, I don't see that coming from Anna Maria College.
Right.
Which means that we need to start somewhere where we can get this done at least a week and a half before the 16th. So you're looking at the 4th, the 5th,
Right.
beginning of next week. We have to have this done by the beginning of next week to get everything printed, to get it posted.
Right. And, and not to say I'm opposed to having all of those conversations, right? Like, we should look into everything, but not right now.
I think,
Right now, we just need to get to the bottom line.
I think that Mark's point yesterday, when he said that sometimes in business you have to restructure, is a valid point. However, I think it's not going to be, you have to restructure, you have to restructure, you have to restructure. It's going to be town-wide. Our whole picture's going to have to restructure.
Agreed.
But that's not a conversation that's going to get done between now and Tuesday or Wednesday.
Not at all.
It's going to be a sit-down. I mean, I hate to say this, but go back to March of 22, I think it was, when I said, this is coming, be prepared, start now, work on it. I specifically said that to the Finance Committee. I know I said it because it's on the video on demand. I said, look, we had a 0.4% increase in Wachusett. We weren't paying the dispatch yet. There was a couple of other things that were, I mean, it was the easiest budget season my whole time. It was a nice way to go out.
Yep.
So getting talked back in was tough because we went out so easy. But I said, look, the storm is coming. It's obvious. I mean, it's the hurricanes in the Atlantic. I'm giving you, not just me. I mean, we all should have seen.
Yeah.
It's going to make landfall. Put up the shutters, and we didn't put up the shutters, and here we are. So now we got to restructure. I think this summer, well, not just this summer, this next 6 or 7 months, we need to restructure what's going on in this town.
Agreed.
From the top down, it's going to be some hard choices and some hard, kind of what your husband said. But you know what? That's what has to happen. But the problem is we're not going to you just can't do that in a week.
So we just need an actual budget number for the town meeting.
Balanced.
So, a little more detail than that, correct?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Let's have a balanced budget.
We vote, a couple years ago, we used to vote on every single line. Town administrator supplies, $10. Town administrator purchase services, $15. we got away from that about 2 years ago or so, and we only vote bottom line. Town administrator, bottom line, $25.
Yeah.
That being said, we still always provide the detail to all the residents, so if they come to town meeting, they have a question.
It all
they-
itemizes.
Yeah, and they can always hold it and be like, excuse me, let's talk about town administrator, $10 and $15, and, you know, they're not necessarily gonna swap them out, but they may say zero it out, double it, whatever it may be.
Okay.
The departments now have the ability to do the internal transfers. So essentially, even, the only way that you're gonna really constrict a department from moving money from one line to the next is if you have a town policy, right? Like, you say a policy that, there's no overtime for administrative assistants, right? I didn't mean to pick on Tiffany, it's the only one that's there.
That's
right?
fine.
No overtime for administrative assistants, that's the select board's policy, so the DPW director could move money all around, but he can't move money around to put
To
it
that.
towards, right?
Understood.
So you could do that, and you'll see, I just sent my stuff over, so you'll see
Okay.
that that's there. It doesn't have an accompanying memo yet, because I was still working with it and just bouncing some ideas.
Okay.
And I don't know how it'll be received. I thought yours was excellent. But we need as many ideas as we can, because we've got to move this along.
Agreed. Yep.
We've got to move the ball down the field.
Yep. Yep. I mean, I watched tonight mine essentially get undone line by line. And I'm not, like, I don't take any pride in authorship of it, right? Because it's a moving, living, breathing thing that, you know, we all need to come to an agreement on. It's not just what I say by any stretch. But, you
somebody
know.
had to do it.
But somebody had to do it, yeah,
Sure.
and then I just watched it all unravel. So, you know, it is what it is. But we're gonna be here another night, and I just wanna make sure that our starting point is realistic.
Yeah.
So,
And I can get behind that. I much prefer to see line by line than seeing in writing a narrative. I can't work with that. I need to see the numbers.
Yeah.
I like to see them move as they go along.
right, and it was helpful to have that, like, live document in front of
Yeah.
us and have Heather manipulating it as we're talking. I think that was helpful, you know, to be able to see the changes that are being made.
Yeah, and so we scroll down, it's $188,000.
Went the other way.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right, I don't know if there's anything else we're
No,
going
I
to
don't
solve
think so.
tonight.
No, just I'm all tired.
I think it would be best if you reached out to Mark tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. I'll get fired up. And I don't want to get anybody fired up. Like I said, 60 years in town, almost, not quite, but getting very close, being 61. And I think I arrived when I was 2. You see a lot. You see a lot of people come and go. And so it does get a little bit emotional sometimes. And when someone hasn't been in town as long. And the other thing that sometimes frustrates me is, and it's nobody's fault, but we have some people that are, I mean, obviously advocating for their jobs, and I get that. But I can't just advocate for them, and I do, but I also have to think about the effect on our 5,004 residents.
Right.
All right, let's have a motion, go home and have some dinner.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? Kirk is no longer on.
No, it's
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.